Welcome to episode 72 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host. And this week, there was some big games. There were some very impactful games on the top 8/top 9. There have also been some interesting calls made within the past couple of hours that we will also talk about. We will also bring up a retirement that will be happening at season's end, but was announced last week. And there's just a lot of football that we have to cover, so let's jump straight into it. How are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
Not too bad, not too bad. I had a fairly busy weekend, so I did not really catch all that much football, so my notes will be a bit briefer than usual. What was I doing? I went to my normal psych on Saturday down at Fremantle. Always a nice trip down there. It happens every 2 weeks. Then I came back and I went out for dinner in Perth. Very expensive. The most expensive meal I've personally paid for, which was a $38 gnocchi from an Italian restaurant, which was
Fancy.
okay. I mean, could have been a bit better. It was probably $5 too expensive.
Oh, yeah.
But because it's Perth, it's like, well, maybe it's just like Perth expensive. A lot of the best places to eat.
I don't know. My brother and I had to go through the god awful Ticketex/Ticketmaster process today for concert tickets, and they were extremely more expensive than everyone was expecting. So we're not very happy right now.
Ah, right.
So
that's
everyone's
paying a fortune.
Everything is expensive.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it wasn't outrageous. It was just more expensive than I probably would have paid for.
No, that's fair enough.
But good enough. Good to be around the family, especially since we've been having some, not family issues, but some middling family news over the last few months. So yeah, it was good to get together and talk. And then, I was just seeing different parts of this family on Sunday. So I was out and about. Didn't really get to see much football.
That's all good. Nothing wrong with, being out and about and living life.
Yeah.
For me, my weekend was pretty quiet. I did a stream on Friday. I did a stream also yesterday as we're recording this on Sunday, which was a lot of fun. But otherwise, I mostly just had a pretty quiet weekend. Watched some football. Watched some of the women's. I watched the Richmond girls lose to Sydney. Kind of expected, but it was still a good game to watch. Zippy Fish, what a star already, honestly. I watched the Thursday AFLW games as well. They were also very good and very entertaining. Otherwise, just mostly watched the men's as well and had a pretty chill weekend.
Yeah, as I said, I did get to watch, albeit on my phone, the Fremantle vs Port one, and I was sort of in a win-win situation since I like both teams a fair bit. Member for Free AW, my technical supported team, but I still got a lot of love for Port women's. I get all the socials for them, so it's hard not to make a connection there. So so I'd said I enjoyed a fair chunk of the AFLW. In fact, I think I probably watched more AFLW than AFL men's, just because the only time I had free was like more interesting AFLW matchups than some of the men's. So although we won't get into too much, I think we are going to do some sort of recap a bit later. Not bad opening round, few upsets, which will probably cap off another date.
Yes. But let's jump into some breaking news that only broke literally like 2 or 3 hours ago as we're recording this. And Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera has finally made a call on his future, and he is staying at St Kilda with a 2-year extension worth $2 million, and that is insane for a young player like him.
$1 million.
Like, to be honest, like we've already seen his upside, and we know he can continue to improve even further. So honestly, I think it's worth it. But the 2-year, the kind of like gap now sets a standard for the St Kilda have to make it back to finals to make it worth it.
I don't think they do, actually. Like I said, I don't think they have enough players coming up because, again, technically they don't start paying him till 3 more years, and there's not going to be too many players that I would be putting a lot of money towards.
Well, they're still the rumors are they're still looking at TDK, and they're possibly wanting to take League of Lear from the Giants.
Well, luckily it's not going to go for much.
No, but
He's not being
TDK
able to
is
break into
is
the game.
is wanting a pretty penny is the issue.
Yeah, well then don't get TDK. I don't think it's that necessary for the Saners at the moment, but I mean, with good list management, this is not a bad move,
No,
for sure. As I
I think
said,
this is definitely really good for them.
I think Port were never going to be able to pay him after his contract expires, so his willingness to probably go over there diminished. Same with Adelaide. Probably not enough pieces going towards St Kilda for them to want to do that. So, in the end of the day, it's good news for Saints fans as they've been sweating bullets every single week.
Oh
It's
yeah,
been mentioned. A lot of them I knew sort of were resigned to the fact that he was going just because it's a sort of a
when
same thing to happen.
when
But
my best friend
you
and
know,
I went to the Richmond St Kilda game the other week, we talked about it, and she was pretty set on like, yeah, he's going. Like he's
yeah,
already gone. But no, this is good. This is fantastic news for St Kilda fans. Fantastic news, honestly,
yeah,
just for AFL as a whole because it shows solid loyalty, which is something that a
yeah.
club always loves.
Chivalry still exists. Whoa.
And
Yeah, I
we
mean,
already
look,
know he's fantastic. He's likely all Australian this year,
yeah,
so it's going to be very exciting to see where the next few years end up for him.
that's right. I could do an all-Australian thing. When do we
Uh,
have to do that by? I forget when they're announced.
Buy round is in 2 weeks, so probably figure that out in 2 weeks.
All right. You'll tell me what to do.
Yeah, we'll get around to doing it.
He'll be in there. He'll
All
be
right.
in there.
Next bit of news. Luke Breust has officially announced that he is retiring at the end of the Hawthorn season. Well, the end of the AFL season, but at the end of Hawthorn's
Hmm.
campaign. Obviously, they will be playing finals this year.
Yeah.
So it'll be dependent on where they finish up in the finals run.
Honestly, unless injuries happens, he's probably not going to play anymore this year. 7 games. I'm pretty sure all of them were sub. Are gonna.
Yeah, majority of
Uh,
them were sub. He was known as a super sub for the past 2 years because he would just come in and just
yeah, last year he
dominate.
was used as their most often one and scored fairly well. 21 goals last year. Nothing to scoff at for someone who had limited time on ground. But yeah, we'll start at the beginning though. Speculative rookie draft pick by Hawthorn right after their premiership. Stayed around for a little bit, stuck in the VFL until he was re-rookied in 2011. Might have also been re-rookied before, but that was the last time he was ever done that before his debut in 2011, where he had straightaway impact. Took a tiny while to get going. Start off but as I said, 30 goals on debut. Actually, that's still pretty good for a smallish forward. But what he was known for, and that's why he's often so paired as Gunston was the leader, and Breust was the finisher, because geez, they was just such a powerful tandem. Breust, his distribution was also pretty good. You always forget that he had a couple of really good score involvements and goal assists. He was always near the top in that. So it wasn't just his goal kicking ability. But 553 goals for 256 behinds. That is peak accurate goal kicking. Not a season where he's under 50%. Came close this year, only kicked 4 goals, 3. But geez, he was good with that. And as I said, not quite as good as Marcus Gunston was, but always managed to find those leads, especially when Hawthorn had that very potent forward line. Yeah, as I said, I don't think he probably would have played 1 year with Buddy, wouldn't he? 2011 was 12 was when he shifted.
No,
Can't
because Buddy
remember.
played in 2013. Buddy left at the end of the
2013.
2013
Okay.
season, so they played a couple years
Yeah.
together.
Well. Anyway, so as I said, he has played in some pretty stacked forward lines, but even without, he managed to be very, very useful and sort of provide some stability with the rebuilding Hawks. 47 goals in 2023 when they were struggling, 40 goals in 2022. Yeah, really solid output. Again, only a couple of years even where he's dipped under Um, 20 games. I think only one of them was injury, so very fantastic body.
Mm-hmm.
And as of course, reached 300 games, even though it was only a 14-year career, just because Hawthorn played so many finals.
Yeah, like they
And yeah,
were amongst like Geelong and Sydney of just being absolute powerhouse teams for like a
mm,
very big stretch of time during the 2010s and the early in the late 2000s.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, as I said, as you mentioned, at the end of the career, turned into a super sub. Sort of had a bit of a from what I've heard, had a bit of a soft agreement. Both him and Gunston were told that, okay, we're primarily going to play you in the VFL. We want you to train up some of our kids, and just whenever we feel like it, we're going to call on you. Obviously, Bruce not needed as much, and we're probably going to be talking about him a lot today. His partner in crime, he's still going very fresh. So
He is.
for Bruce, he knew his time's up. He's going to hang out the booth, probably going to be around the game for a bit. Unarguably, sorry, he would unequivocally get a job almost anywhere as a goal kicking coach, one would imagine. So yeah, anything you'd like to add?
I just think that he was one of my favorite Hawthorn players to watch in like that sort of premiership era and then into the late 2010s. And granted, I didn't really watch all that much footy back then. Like, I didn't really get super into it until about 2015, 2016.
Mm,
So I didn't see like the 13-14 premiership, but like when I started watching games a lot more, when I watched a lot of Hawthorn games especially, I had on my eye a lot on Gunston and on Luke Breust and on
mm,
like a lot of their midfield as well was also very very strong, very entertaining. But I always love a good forward player, especially a small forward.
mm.
And Bruce was always just that star pillar for me.
Yeah, and as also probably the other thing is he's a surprisingly good stoppage player in that forward line. I think that's one other thing that separates him a bit from Gunston.
Mm.
He just had a bit more knack for reading the ball on ground level as well. So, yeah, as much as it's like weird to tie him so heavily to another player, he does feel like a bit of a tandem pair. But it just goes to show is, he had really, really good strength, and he knew how to use them to full amount because they just perfectly complemented
Yeah,
what was
absolutely.
in Hawthorn's forward line, and he was skilled enough to even when that shifted, his production never really dropped off.
Mm. So just to cover his accolades throughout his journey with Hawthorn, he was vice captain in 2023 and 2024. He was Hawthorn best clubman in 2023, leading goal kicker in 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022 and 2023. All Australian in 2014 and 2018, made Hawthorn life member in 2017, Premiership player obviously in 13, 14, and 15. Fourth place in the Best and Fairest, winning the Peter Crimmins Medal in 2012. NAB Rising Star nominee in 2011, and was part of the 22 under 22 team in both 2012 and 2013.
Yeah, it must have been. I guess that makes sense.
As
Yeah,
well as, of course,
it was
currently,
a
307 games, 553 goals, and
yeah, it was just
29
a very
Brownlow
late birthday.
votes in total.
I was gonna say, it was just very late birthday. That's why he was able to spend 3 years and still make 22 under 22 for a couple.
Yeah, that's one
Um,
upside of
yeah,
having like a November birthday. You can
yeah,
sneak in with
exactly.
a couple extra
Um,
accolades.
where's Tamora?
Country New South
That's
Wales.
apparently where it's from. Okay,
It's
that's
either
where it's
South
from.
Coast or it's out in the West. I can't remember, but it's like it's
Oh
country.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so we do salute you, Luke Breust, and we hope once the end of the Hawthorns campaign is over, you have a wonderful retirement. All right, now it is time for us to jump into the games that have just been gone, the games that were, as they might be dubbed. Starting down over at Marvel Stadium, where the Bombers hosted St Kilda, so fairly even ground, and with a 2 point margin, the Saints won out 11-11 77 to 11-9 75.
Yeah, and although we did say in the week before, we did think this was going to be a tie contest. I actually tipped Essendon. I would say for some reason I threw a few darts on the board. I missed a few darts on the board
Yeah,
as
you
well.
did. I was looking at the tips just before, and I was very shocked that you only got 4 tips.
Yeah, I was just I was like, well, I'm in the middle of the pack. I might as well like just chuck some. Um, didn't work out.
I
It
could have
is
gotten a
whatever.
maximum of 8 if I didn't put a bit of trust in my Tigers and had to go north, but
Hmm.
oh well.
Yeah, it's like that. But yeah, no one actually thought this would be the more watchable Friday night contest, even though it was a bit skill error riddled. It was very interesting to see the Dons put up a very valiant tie fight, tie fight, a tough fought context against the Saints, which actually featured a very even spread of performers and goal scoring areas. There was no real area of the ground either team were able to take full advantage of, and probably not lacking. As I said, defense wasn't really a huge part of this contest.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that for Essendon, this was just all about who stood out in their multitude of absences. We've been going on about this, but they put on a very brave performance considering Goldstein put up one of the biggest games from a 37-year-old ruckman that you'll probably see. Redmond tried to rebound the ball from the no-toll backline of Essendon, who even lost Laverde during this game. And McMahon continued to fight and take over Wright's position as the most threatening key forward
Mm-hmm.
until Blazy, you guessed it, he came off in the fourth quarter with a sore wrist. Make no mistake, St Kilda were very lucky to win this contest. I don't think they played terribly from what I saw. I only really watched a few highlights and looked over the stats. But really, the Dons outclassed them until the final quarter when defensive matchups started to lean in the Saints' favour due to injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think against the Dons is they weren't really as lethal for the amount of back half control that they had. Not that the Saints were particularly that great either. But I will say, with so many injuries, it is good to see that the Dons are still keeping their structures going, despite the team being absolutely reamed with injuries.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the Dons actually for the fact that they were still able to kind of play their style of game despite just how mangled they have been this season. And even with their mid-season pickups, like McMahon, I think he was this season, I can't remember. And
Mm.
even with the introduction of more debutants, they're still able to really like play such a high spirited game, be able to continuously
Mm.
work on their system, and the fact that it works so well. Granted, it is against St Kilda, which you'd think would be a blight against St Kilda, but the fact of the matter is, both
Mm.
of these teams are in the bottom six, so it was always going to be
Yeah,
like a tight game because they're both like in the middle of the pack, basically.
I think Saints just sort of played where they were. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think they played lower to where you would expect them to. But I think Essendon just like lifted a bit. And let's face it, as I said, if Jai Menzies could kick straight, miss one right on the goal square, probably Essendon would have won this one.
Yeah, like it
A
would be
bit
a
butterfly,
slightly flip
obviously,
script
but
if Menzies had his kicking boots on.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's not really much I have to say about this one. And it was pretty much your standard Saints performance. A bit less in terms of evenness of players played, but their highest, not highest ranked players, but their players that put in the performances were enough, which is just seems to be the week in week out performance of St Kilda as they managed to win. What was it, five less than 10 point games in a row?
Yeah,
First time that's
a
happened
lot
in a
of the
long
games
while.
have been very close this season.
Yeah. So St
Um,
Kilda getting wins. Um, eh, Probably weird. Like now, before this stretch, they were like a bit below where they should be on the ladder, and now they're probably a bit higher.
is
Uh,
this was this their fourth or fifth win in a row?
a
Because
fifth, I think.
I feel like it's really weird that they just suddenly got on a win streak at the end of the season.
Yeah, because they had a pretty brutal lineup before.
That's
Like they
true.
played mainly top 8 teams, and now they've had like North St Kilda, Melbourne.
Richmond
Uh, yeah,
and the Bombers. So yeah, you're not wrong.
it's they've only just been beating them, but it's better than losing. Sorry,
Yes,
it's 4 wins in a row.
four.
The
Okay,
one
I
before that was
I
the
could.
Catters.
That's right. Yeah. All right. In that case, I may as well just jump over to our individuals. Starting with
Yeah.
Hugo Garcia, who I thought was very influential with pressure for the Saints. He finished with 20 disposals, 8 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 3 clearances, a behind, 4 score involvements, 12 tackles, 25 pressure acts, and 6 scramble gets. Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera, of course, the big money man now. He continues to show incredible promise, kicking a goal from 24 disposals, 18 of them effective, equating to 75% efficiency. 11 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 6 score involvements, 14 pressure acts, 577 meters gained. And Anthony Caminiti was pushing back everything he could in defense. He collected 6 disposals, 3 marks, 16 one percenters, 16 spoils, and 100% time on ground. He was doing everything he could to crash packs and defend on his one-on-one. I think he got a couple of goals kicked against him, but you can't really fault that too much like, when who are we normally talking? Cal Wilkie was getting shut down
Wilkie.
pretty well.
Yeah, he had a very quiet game. He was a bit shown up by McMahon. Who was he on McMahon?
I think it was
I
predominantly
can't
on
quite remember
McMahon.
who.
It was either McMahon or Peter Wright,
Um,
really.
yeah, well, as I said, I think he had Wilkie had McMahon, and trying to play intercept, but McMahon just demanded a bit too much respect. So
Yeah, it was very interesting matchup to watch and down in the Saints backline. But shout out also to a debutant, Alex Dodson, who finished with 8 disposals, 6 of them effective, equating to 75% efficiency, 2 marks, 2 hitouts, a behind, and 2 score involvements. Over on the Bombers side of things, Andy McGrath was dominant with ball in hand, finishing with 35 touches, 29 of them effective, equating to 82.9% efficiency, 14 contested possessions, 6 inside 50, 6 clearances, a behind, 9 score involvements, 9 tackles, 25 pressure acts. And Archie Perkins looks solid as well, kicking 2 goals from 13 disposals, 11 of them effective, equating to 84.6% efficiency, 4 contested possessions, 4 marks, 3 score involvements, 4 tackles, and 12 pressure acts. And shout out to another debutant, their 15th debutant, officially breaking the record. Obviously, I think 14 was the tie off the top of my head.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
15 officially does break it. Reese Unwin, who finished with a goal from 9 disposals, 4 contested possessions, 2 marks, both of them being inside 50, 3 score involvements, 2 tackles, both of those were also inside 50, and 11 pressure acts. And on the injury side of things, Jaden Laverde went out with a hip. And as you mentioned, McMahon did go out with sore wrist in the fourth, but probably isn't too bad to be a concern going into next week.
I'm not too sure about that, but we'll wait and see. I did check actually because I did notice he didn't put it, but it wasn't on the AFL report, so it's either just a mistake on there or they got confirmed that it wasn't too bad. So Essendon fans just look at the injury list when it comes out later today. If you're listening to this,
Yes. All right. Next on our list, we're going over to the west, out at Optus Stadium, where Freo
mm,
hosted the Lions, and with a 57-point margin, the Lions won out 15-11, 101 to 5-14, 44.
all right. And before I get into my little thing, I want to take you down to Friday. I was going home uh, from Perth after my little volunteer shift at the art gallery,
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting ready for a big night. I was going to take the Armadale line. The WA Perth Transport were maybe a bit overly zealous. They tried to, well, basically cordon off part of the train to try and get people to enter the carriages from the back.
Mm-hmm.
This was 2 hours before the game, uh, maybe one and a bit, which was got a few people a bit mad, a few terse conversations. But once you got into the trains, even like the fewer Fremantle fans that were there, they were buzzing in this game. It was, despite the way that the result went, it was probably one of the most excited I've seen Fremantle to enter a game for a while. as I said, a packed-out Optus Stadium got thunderstruck. A wasteful Freo let a game where they had control but couldn't convert turn into a second half thumping.
Mm-hmm.
8 behinds in a row before 3 on the trot before halftime. Fremantle had decent territory, more so in the second quarter. But Brisbane could just rack up quicker movement from uncontested marking, as in they decided to go slow until they found their moments where they went fairly quickly, where Freo were just stuck in second gear, as the saying goes. Was still just written the same point. Brisbane's conversion ended up being a lot more lethal with their movement. Freo only scored 1-4 from the backline the entire night. It was very cheap possessions, but Brisbane still had a whopping 203 effective kicks out of their 268, which went at 76%, which is actually around average, but the fact that they got 203 effective kicks, normally the higher you're kicking, the less effective, where Brisbane just had both. So it could be okay if Freo's midfield could hold up, but the gap between the top-forming mids and the bottom was immense. Zach Bailey absolutely towed up poor Driscoll on the outside, whilst getting to a few centre bounces, and Freo just had a lot of stragglers. Their forward lines were reduced to having little or no impact. Amos, Voss, Switter, Frederick, Bolton had very little scoring and contest impact. And whilst Reid was really good, Murphy Reid, it was very smart for Brisbane to put Jasper Fletcher on him. Must have been doing a little research while making certain articles during the week, because putting Fletcher on him allowed him to run up the wing, and he actually won a lot of contests himself to become the highest possession getter of them. Probably fairly rare with the midfield of Brisbane for Jasper Fletcher to be winning the possession count. But this was an absolute spanking. It did expose how much Freo have lacked in some areas, with their lack of contested wins and their low tackling pressure fully exploited by Brisbane. With a lack of pressure one way and terrible forward conversion, entries that weren't a behind were often kicks to a roaming Harris Andrews. And this was a night to forget for Freo fans, who have a very likely win and in scenario up against the Bulldogs next week. Whilst the Lions have a probable win and get top 4 scenario against the Hawks.
Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely comprehensive. This was one of the most ruthless I've seen Brisbane in a fair while. They were solidly ruthless against Collingwood, but this was a whole nother level.
Yeah, it felt like they kind of took a while to really find their groove again, and really kind of put themselves in the right position to defend their premiership. Because this doesn't look like the same Brisbane that we looked at, like, even just 2 months ago.
No, because as I said, like, I actually thought, like, the first half was sort of reminded me of Brisbane in the first half of the year, where they, like, looked threatening, but it was more just off turnovers. And then they were like, okay, we're doing pretty well. Let's really tamp on the screws and prevent Freo from getting any forward momentum. Because, said if Freo could kick a bit straight, they would have been in at halftime. Probably even should have had the lead. But nothing about the second half suggested Fremantle had the game on any terms. It was just, it went from being wasteful to woeful, basically.
Yeah, that's a very fair assessment. But yeah, as you mentioned, like, this makes this week's game against the Dogs a must-win for Freo, because the only way they don't make it is if the Suns lose both of their games against Port Adelaide and the Bombers, which we don't see happening.
Yeah. Technically, GWS could lose by a bucket load to the Saints, which is a less likely scenario. But
yes, correct.
Got to mention it. Just for the Saints supporters out there that are a bit optimistic. obviously Saints not really knowing big margins as we've talked about this year. So
Yeah. And then
who
yeah,
knows?
on the Brisbane side of things, like they sure up a top four spot if they win against Hawthorn. Otherwise, I think they could drop to as low as sixth, maybe seventh. No, depending on other results, of course.
Hmm.
But that
I mean,
also
technically they've secured a final spot, but yeah,
yes,
seventh is the lowest that they
yeah.
could
The only
go.
teams that can like drop out of the top eight or not make it at all are the Dogs, Freo, and the Suns. Every other team is pretty much locked
And
into fight.
GWS.
GWS are technically feasible, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, technically Brisbane Lions, if they won by 400, might be able to, but
True.
yeah, that would take a strange set of circumstances.
Yes. But yeah, essentially, like top, pretty much first to sixth, basically locked in for a final spot. Where they finish still remains to be seen.
Mm.
It's looking likely that Collingwood and Geelong will Adelaide and Geelong will finish top two. Obviously, we'll talk about this properly a bit later, but that's kind of
Yeah,
what we're looking at in terms of scenarios for these two teams.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
let's jump over to our individuals, and I'm going to start with Charlie Cameron, who finally decided to show up for the year. Because
Yeah,
he just
a couple of cheapies, but it's still solid.
yeah, I mean, I know that he has some sort of he's been doing some sort of pressure role mostly and a lot less goal kicking in terms of that
Mm.
forward line, but he finally decided to bring out his country roads once again, and he kicked 3-1 from 13 disposals, 5 of them contested, 4 marks, 3 inside 50s, 6 score involvements, 2 tackles, both of them inside 50, and 4 ground ball gets. Darcy Wilmot was solid off of intercept down in Brisbane's defence, finishing with 21 touches, 18 of them effective, equating to 85.7% efficiency, 8 contested possessions, 10 intercepts, 8 marks, 3 inside 50s, 6 score involvements, 2 tackles, 399 metres gained. Then Darcy fought, I thought, worked really hard in the ruck. He finished with 17 hitouts, 3 of them to advantage, and a goal from 13 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 4 marks, 5 clearances, 3 score involvements, 2 tackles, 20 pressure acts, 6 1%ers, and 2 spoils. Shout out to Brisbane debutant Luke Beacon, who finished with 3 disposals, a mark, 2 pressure acts, and a 1%er. Very low stats, but I think
Can
he was
I
deployed very late in
can
the
I
fourth
quickly
quarter.
give an unshout out
Yeah,
to Brisbane?
go on.
Absolutely smashing him, but still didn't put their rookie on for a run.
No,
Absolute crime.
like you could have just thrown him off thrown him in at the start of the fourth quarter and give him a better run, but you sent him in
Yeah,
late.
I think he came 10 minutes or maybe even a bit more, but not that much. So, yeah, very late. Couldn't really get going.
It's
But actually, like the 3 disposals per minute is actually not too bad.
I mean, you can only do what you get get available to you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah.
Yeah,
All right, chat.
still as many as Zipwood, who unfortunately struggled a bit.
Yes, and I will talk about that in a
News
moment as
coming
to
about that later.
why.
There was a reason.
Yes. But jumping over to Freo's side of things, Jordan Clark tried hard. He collected 24 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 4 marks, 5 inside 50s, a behind, 2 score involvements, 3 tackles, 13 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, 3 spoils, and 583 metres gained. And then Caleb Sarong was the only real contested midfielder for the Dockers. He finished with 26 disposals, 19 of them effective, equating to 71% efficiency, 16 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 6 score involvements, 5 tackles, 27 pressure acts, 12 ground ball gets, and 408 metres gained. On the injury side of things, Jared Berry came off with a shoulder injury. I don't know how bad it is, so hopefully he'll be alright for finals. Then Eric Hipwood came off with a calf issue, as we had just mentioned. He did look a little funny during this game. He is possibly in doubt for finals at the moment, but they're hoping it's not super serious and he'll be able to play at the latest, I would assume, the prelim. But it's a very 50-50 up in the air kind of thing right now.
I think it's a 4 week, maybe 5 sort of thing. So calves are normally around that long. So yeah, that would be about prelim. Maybe if he gets a good run. And Brisbane are actually playing in it semi-final.
Yeah, that too. All right.
Yeah.
Let's jump over now. Sorry. Let's jump over now to our first Saturday game. We're going up to the Gold Coast for our second expansion cup of the year. The Suns facing the Giants, of course, and with a 35-point margin, the Giants won out 17-9, 111 to 11-10, 76.
And the Suns continue to struggle against their smaller brothers as the Giants once again just look too rounded to worry about the relative strengths to the Gold Coast. They did put up fights at various parts of the games, but never really looked like they were going to strip control off GWS. Movement at times was phenomenal by GWS. I want to give a shout out to Harvey Thomas, who I think has joined Jones as a real outside to forward link up threats to supply their forward line. Honestly, it's going to be super dangerous if they ever get what's his face back consistently, Brent Daniels, or they might have to trade one of them, which would be fairly interesting. But yeah, as I said, their forward line though absolutely made the most of it. Cadman loved the supply. Grzycki, as I said, was able to capitalize a bit more than he did last week. So that both contributed to solid nights out. Both teams were actually being fairly impactful from clearances, with the inside mids going solidly offensively, but allowing their counterparts to score, with the scores from midfields being 4-7 to 6-6 from scores from stoppages, as well as a lot of mids obviously racking up score involvements. I think almost every inside mid had a pretty good stats-wise game. GWS were just simply a lot better on the ground once the ball went into their forward line and could link it up a hell of a lot better, whilst Gold Coast had trouble generating solid ground-level opportunities and just allowed the rebounding power of Aidan, Whitfield, and Ash to go unopposed. It is really hard to stop GWS when all three of those players are playing to their maximum effect.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you can force them to chip around. You can get them to rack up possessions but still get stalled. But if you leave anyone on the outside to link up with, they are going to hit that target 9 times out of 10. Yeah, so there wasn't too much pressure, as I said. But it seemed like the fact that GWS conversely were able to reduce the outside marking of the Gold Coast, which again isn't their strength. GWS were able to win it a lot better at ground level, and it prevented the cleaner link-up plays that the Suns are known for. On the flip side, though, when GWS were in control, Gold Coast run just wasn't enough to force enough intercepts, especially from the forward half, which forced them to move the ball deeper from their defensive backline. We know their defense is okay. Probably didn't have the greatest night today, but their movement from deep defense needs a lot of work. And since they were forced to do that for the majority of the game, they really struggled. And I think it was just quite a clear, convincing performance from what I saw. Again, I think I watched a bit of the second half before, a bit of the second quarter before the Port game, which we'll talk about in a bit. Probably didn't actually need to watch that in hindsight. But yeah, as I said, it just seemed to be going their way. Even when they were looking threatening, Ben Long giving away a pretty crucial 50-meter, which resulted in someone a bit weird that wasn't Royston getting a goal. Might have been Harvey Thomas, actually. Yeah, as I said, just it seemed from there, there was nothing really Gold Coast were able to do. They were just put to bed, which is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, and even
whilst
when
they should get...
Sorry, no, go on.
I was going to say, while they should get the last two games, unless Port can farewell Hinkley in a good manner, it sort of undoes the fairly decent back half of the year that they've been having.
Yeah, it's put the Suns in a really interesting position where the Port game and their bonus rescheduled game against the Bombers essentially are like a do or die kind of situation. Like, granted, because it's 2 games, as long as they win 1, they should be in. But it's such a weird. It's because it's such a weird season that, like, if the Dogs beat Freo, that means every team currently in the 8 would be on 60 or above, which means the Suns would have to win both games to get a decent position. but at least have to win one by a fairly
Exactly.
decent margin to make it in.
Yeah, exactly. So as I said, the other scenario is like we were mentioning with GWS. If they did lose by a lot, they technically only need to lose one game to miss out on the finals. But realistically, if they win one, they should be in.
Yes.
It's just the difference will be whether they get a home game or whether they're forced to travel. Which, as a young team, probably is a big dictation. Although, as seen by this game, it sort of hurts. I do think the Giants are a bad matchup for them, just because they're so outside based.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, they're good at stopping transition run. Gold Coast, as we've mentioned before, when you drive that up, their forward line isn't that great as long as you can keep the turnovers under control. And that was pretty much the case for that night. Just a lot of control by the Giants. And the Suns, while they obviously broke through enough, I don't think it was enough to concern the Giants. Who, as I said, just seem on a whim week in, week out, just to whether they turn on the clamps or not. Sometimes I'll just let you score a lot, and sometimes I won't. It's a very weird. And last year, they had a lot more identity than this year, where they just seem to be adjusting week in, week out. It's very hard to read them.
Yeah, it's really interesting kind of position and just identity that the Giants have kind of given themselves. And even looking at this game, they didn't even need to require they didn't even need to ask of their big superstar forwards to actually have a major impact. Obviously they had good impact. Being Hogan, Riccardi, Cadman. Wait, was Hogan playing? I can't remember if Hogan was playing. But Riccardi and Cadman, I know had decent impact. Obviously, Harry Roaston was kind of the big one, big talking point. I will talk about him. He's in my notes. But the fact that the way that this game played out is they allowed a lot of the younger superstars to stand out and really take control of a game that they really shouldn't have been allowed to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the major things. And I will say, I did check to make sure, because obviously I didn't really watch too much of this game. Hogan wasn't playing.
So, okay, I thought so. I just couldn't remember. I know.
Yes, as I said.
Yeah, it's Riccardi and Cadman were kind of the two main pillars up there, but then obviously with Roaston and a couple of their midfielders pushing up, they had a lot more avenue than what they normally do.
I'd say Brzezinski still kicked 3 while he was sort of giving Oscar Adams a bit of a bath. He had to get subbed off at halftime because he just wasn't in that matchup. So yeah, as I said, for Gold Coast, probably their defense. Whilst I wouldn't be too concerned, it's just, yeah, as I said, probably was just one toll too many for them. Yeah, as I said, I don't think Mac Andrews just although he did an okay job on Riccardi, I just don't think is that, when you force him to play one-on-one, I don't think is that great.
No,
I think he has good synergy with Collins.
Yes.
I just think that you sort of need, and this is if you're going to make Gold Coast a lockdown team, which I don't think you have to. This is a problem that may or may not need fixing. But yeah, as I said, the less you can ask, the more you can, the less you need of Andrews to be a one-on-one defender, the more you can get an appeal off.
Yes,
the better the Gold Coast.
He definitely plays better as an interceptor and
exactly
like a crash packs kind of player.
And this was an example of where it just unwound a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the worst defense, but just found out this matchup.
Pretty much, and it's just got to be something they have to tighten up going into these last 2 games, because it could all come undone if things don't go the way, if they don't plan correctly.
Yeah, well, as I said, if they get 7th or 8th, you know what I mean? They can't be picky and choosy with matchups, you know what I mean? A loss and you're out. So, yeah.
That's right. All right, let's jump over to my individuals. And as was just announced, because thankfully I refreshed the page and had a look, Harry Roaston is the rising star for the week. And he was also top of my list in my notes, so it was perfect timing. He was the unlikely leading goal kicker, and he finished with 4 goals. Very good 4 goals as well. And he also finished with 12 disposals, 10 of them effective, equating to 83.3% efficiency, 3 contested possessions, 6 marks with 4 of them inside 50, 3 inside 50s overall, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles with 3 of them also inside 50, and 15 pressure acts. Harvey Thomas moved the ball well through that midfield, finishing with 23 touches, 17 of them effective, equating to 73.9% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 8 marks, 3 inside 50s, 3 clearances are behind, 8 score involvements, 3 tackles, 12 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, 2 spoils, and 446 metres gained. Then Finn Callaghan continues to be a standout, collecting 29 disposals, 24 of them effective, equating to 82.8% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 4 intercepts, 8 marks, 7 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 8 score involvements, 6 tackles, 17 pressure acts, 10 grab ball gets, and 568 metres gained. Over on the Suns side of things, Brody Hewland was very solid defensively. He finished with 18 touches, 15 of them effective, equating to 83.3% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 marks, with 3 of them being intercept marks, 3 score involvements, 4 tackles, 8 pressure acts, 5 1%ers, and 5 spoils. Then Will Powell was very good around the ground, collecting 21 disposals, 4 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 6 marks, 4 inside 50s are behind, 5 score involvements, 5 tackles, 16 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, 3 spoils, and 554 metres gained. Then on the MRO side of things, Alex Davies has been suspended for 1 match, so he could come back for finals, who knows, for rough conduct against Ryan Angwin.
Yeah, honestly, I was a bit surprised that Royston was still eligible because he did play. Obviously, not obviously, but he was a 2003 draft pick. I do remember that. I just didn't know he didn't play at all last year. He might have been injured actually. So 7 games in his debut year. This game probably being his best for his 16th.
Yeah, I think he was injured for a little last season. I just can't remember what specifically it was. I don't think it was an ACL or anything like that, but it might have been like calf or Achilles or something that
it
comes
might
on the
have
long
been.
term.
Yeah, it says here back issues. So, as I said, I think this was just one of those ones where, as I said, that's why GWS were a bit aggressive with trading off some of that depth because they knew they had players like Royston, they had players like Ryan Angwin to come back that they wanted into their side, but just couldn't do so last year due to injury. So now that they get a bit back, get a bit of depth, and it's not looking too bad for the Giants who, as I said, I think a lot of people said that they would do well this year, and they've obviously proved that. But you know what I mean? There were a few not negative people, but like the negatives against them was going to be testing that depth, and I think they've pretty much fully ticked the box in terms of that. Had a few injuries, and hasn't really seemed to bother them too much.
Yes. All right, let's jump over now to our next Saturday game down at Marvel Stadium, where Carlton hosted Port Adelaide with a 54-point margin. Carlton won out 18-10, 118 to 9-10, 64.
Also, I completely blanked. Did you mention the MRO for Alex Davies?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
We're good. Don't you worry.
I was just thinking about how much joy I'd have about talking about this offensive belting. Carlton absolutely enjoyed some rare offensive freedom as Port could do absolutely nothing to stop Harry Mackay lining up against a limping Leah. Please rest him next week. I know we've got bugger all people down there, but we're not injuring his knee for next year. Side note, finished. They couldn't do anything to curb the absolutely rampaging stoppage dominance from the Blues. He scored 8-4 from that area, including 3-2 from centre bounce. As Port couldn't win contest or ground ball. All this led to an easy meter dominance for the Blues, as the ball pretty much lived in their forward half for about 60% of the game. The only saving grace was some of the efforts that the kids were able to produce, and the efficiency up forward sort of helped a bit by junk time. The Blues had sort of given up, not given up, but did what they needed to do after that. But, some of the more positive support were the usefulness of Jack Whitlock. Had a bit of a tough start when he was trying to line up for the ruck, trying to break the defensive matchup against... I don't know who he was on. I was watching on the small screen. It's always hard to tell matchups when you're on your phone.
Not so good.
But in terms of the centre clearance dominance, Hewitt only had 1 less centre clearance than the entirety of Port Adelaide's midfield, and that was where the majority of the damage was done, as Carlton dominated from both inside and outside the midfield. I would say Carlton as well had the positive of the emergence of a ground level game that propped up their forward line. And it was actually the work of some of their younger tall forwards, Hudson O'Keefe and Flynn Young, not to be confused with the other Young that plays for Carlton.
Lewis
Who I've
Young,
forgotten
who
their
I
first
actually
name.
have in my
Lewis
notes.
Young.
You mentioned one
Okay.
Young, I'll mention
So,
the other.
yeah, exactly. They were both able to both impact and in the air and on the ground, whilst in comparison, Rioli, Lord, and Georgiadis offered not much at all while struggling to find many avenues for goals. And, it's got to be said, just because it's significant, I forgot to check if you put him in, but I don't think you did. Okay, cool. Frankie Evans. Really thankful that Carlton is maybe a step up from Port's forward line. And the final note I would like to say from this game is, geez, Boak will be a bit nervous that he was nearly the best on ground for Port when he's one game away from hanging the boots. Yeah, as I
Not a
said,
great
it
look.
was. Yeah, Port's midfield was absolutely dire, and it was funny about the Nas news because I was talking like maybe that was a phrase that was done for St Kilda. I know it's tough, and this is only like with agreements with Ollie. I would consider trading him. I think Port need to change up their midfield structure. I think Wines probably presents the most value because you could easily trade him at 30 to one of the more struggling clubs that need a big body midfield.
Also need a bit of
And
leadership
if
in
he,
that midfield. Like he would be very
yeah,
useful for
well, if
that.
I said if he doesn't want to go to West Coast, he probably would just take anyone. I mean, you got North Melbourne probably wouldn't mind him. St Kilda, obviously, and I don't know, maybe, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so yeah, I just think that something needs to change because, yeah, as I said, you don't want the difference between Port doing okay and the clearances and not being okay to be 21-year-old Jason Horne-Francis. Because that's just
20.
not good enough.
Yeah, I think he's either 21 or 22. I can't remember.
Because there is a fair lot of talent there, but you wouldn't be able to know it. Like, Port's midfield was absolutely dreadful, and it was dreadful both ways of the ball, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good look when you're losing. When you were touted to potentially be a top 8 team, and towards the end of a season, you just get absolutely trounced by a team who's been struggling all year long with monumental issues.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, Collins actually had an okay-ish back half of the season. Their schedules have been tougher, but they've won the games they should, kept the other games close.
Yeah,
I said if it wasn't for the fact that they were abysmal at the start of the year, they probably could be a bit closer to competing for the
I
finals.
think
But
the fact that Voss got a bit of a confidence vote behind him probably took a bit of attention off of the coaching staff as a whole, and it probably helped the
as
players as well.
yeah, well, you can actually see some offensive improvement from Carlton in the back half of the year compared to the first half, where they were just you couldn't tell what they were doing. They were just bombing it long. They couldn't get any snaps on goal.
Mm.
As I said, you lose Kennedy and always just to bring in Frankie Evans, who looked like he wasn't doing anything, and then you work on a bit, and suddenly, Frankie becomes a bit more comfortable. They find some good players like Ashton Moyer, who
Mm-hmm.
looks really well. Motlop even gets involved, even though he probably needs to be a bit better. He's still had a few games that were good in the back half of the season. So, of all the teams that, have been disappointing, I think Carlton and Sydney have restored a bit of respect at the back half of the season. Maybe St Kilda, but they've been so unconvincing about it that I'm not going to quite put them there. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting as to where both these teams are currently sitting, especially when we know that Port Adelaide are about to go through a big change with Carl coming in as head coach at the end after next game.
Yeah. Well, as I said, like, I know I still got a lot of faith in some of what Port Adelaide doing. Like, if you're going to tip one of the teams to be like, who would be at least in the finals mix, it would by far be Carlton. I think Carlton and Sydney. assumedly would be one of those ones where you would probably keep an eye on next year. Bit of a nicer schedule, could bounce back up straight away, whereas Port just seem to be missing a few too many pieces, as well as some structural problems.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just excuse the injuries, but it's making it go from bad to woeful, really.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I'm going to jump over to the individuals now, starting with Harry Mackay, who you did mention kicked 7 goals. He kicked only 7 goals, did not kick a behind. Excellent shooting from him. And he also finished with 21 disposals, 19 of them effective, equating to 90.5% efficiency, 15 contested possessions, 6 marks, 2 hitouts, 3 clearances, 15 score involvements, and 6 pressure acts. Jesse Motlop had good movements. He finished with 8, especially in that forward line because he is a small forward player. He finished with 8 touches, 5 contested possessions, 2 marks, both of them inside 50, 2 clearances, a behind, 5 score involvements, 4 tackles with 3 of them inside 50, 14 pressure acts, 4 ground ball gets, and 3 1%ers. And then Lewis Young, the other Young, was very outstanding defensively, collecting 13 disposals, 12 of them effective, equating to 92.3% efficiency, 4 intercepts, 7 marks, 2 score involvements, 9 1%ers, and 9 spoils. Over on the Port Adelaide side of things, Jack Whitlock was very solid up forward, kicking 3 goals from 8 touches, 5 marks, 4 of them being inside 50, 5 score involvements, and 9 pressure acts. I just want to do a little side mention to his brother over at North Melbourne, because this is the first week that both of them have actually played in the same week.
Yeah.
Granted, I assume in the future
them...
we will see them play against each other at some point, but that's a 2026
not head to
kind of
head,
thing.
but yeah.
No, because they're both forwards, but...
Honestly, both of them have come in earlier than what they would have hoped. I don't think we were really wanting to play Matt Whitlock. Oh, crap. Here we got Jack. Is it Jack?
You've got Jack.
Jack.
North Melbourne and Matt.
We've got Jack, they've got Matt. I think Matt was, again, a bit more projecty. I know I did find it a bit eye-rolling a few players like, oh, they traded up, or they traded their pick to, go for a struggling player. And it's like, yeah, because they, need to build him for the future. He had talent.
You need a future-proof.
You got to work that in.
That's what you got to do.
Again, as I said, some people were saying that about Cadman in his first year, and number 1 draft pick is not doing good enough, and then it's a tall forward.
Yeah, tall players. We've known this for years that tall players take the longest to mature. That's why you see Ruckman take forever.
Yeah, exactly. Again, for both teams, they probably actually need to make a bit of an impact, because I think both teams will need to play them as they're struggling to figure out their forward lines. Obviously, Port Adelaide, depending if A, they stick with, and B, if he gets healthy, Marshall. Ollie Lord has unfortunately taken a bit of a step back, and plus we need him to play in defence, especially if we do rest Aaliyah for another week. Actually, Ollie Lord in defence has been doing okay. He might stay there, to be honest, if need be. So that'll be a bit interesting.
But speaking of tall players, though, Jordan Sweet is my last player for Port Adelaide. He matched up well against TDK and O'Keefe, getting 38 hitouts, 7 of them to advantage, and 18 disposals, 14 of them effective, equating to 77.8% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 6 marks, 5 clearances, 10 score involvements, and 18 pressure acts. On the injury side of things, Cooper Lord went out with concussion, so that's his season over. Josh Sin went out with a corked calf. Hope will be touch and go to play next week, or this week, I should say. And Aaliyah went out with a rolled ankle. Again, he should just be ruled out for next week. He shouldn't play. You need to kind of put him on ice now, just so you can get a decent preseason into him. And on the MRO side of things, Ollie Wines is also ruled out for the rest of the season with a 3-match ban for rough conduct against Cooper Lord, which resulted in said concussion.
Well, that's the one where I didn't think funny, but considering I did make that Ollie Wines trade theory, which isn't really a theory, it's just I think we could deal him if we wanted to, as long as he agreed. But as I said, like last year where Houston got suspended, then traded off, that being of his volition, but it would be weird if the same thing sort of happened again.
Maybe it's just really funny that Port Adelaide just have an affinity for sending away suspended players.
Exactly. But yeah, as I said, Harry Mackay, 11 games, 21 goals, equals second in Carlton's goal kicking.
I mean,
I
to be fair,
know
him
we
and
talk about
Kerno
the
have been out with injury
over-reliance.
for a lot of the season.
Well, Kerno's played 18 games. He's only been going at an average of 1.8. But as I said, it's just the lack of second option, and it's good that we've been seeing some players lift up. But I think some of the other ones have been staying. Lockie Fogarty, Jesse Motlop, again, we've talked about before. They might be thinking about it because, as I said, they're finding some other options which they need. So, I think, as I said, I think Carlton, watch them next week because there'll be a few players wanting to be playing for spots next year.
Pretty much,
Because
yeah.
again,
From what I remember seeing, because I had a look at this recently, they still have a ton of players that aren't signed on yet for 2026. So
yeah, well, they're sort of in a middling sort of
could be
phase
interesting to
now.
see.
I'm guessing they probably put off a lot of contract extensions this year because they've been surprisingly crap.
To put it simply,
So
yeah, there's a
yeah,
fair chance of that.
yeah. And plus, you would think that there's a few players that may or may not retire, or get delisted. Arazia Fantasia, um, you'd argue probably gets retired at the end of the year. Uh, Alex Chincotta hasn't really had much of a run. Or was he the one that was injured?
He was the one that was injured.
Uh,
He been
okay.
out for a while with injury.
Yeah. I didn't realize he's 29. I thought it was like mid, but
Yeah, that's what
he's pretty
I
old.
thought he
But
was younger than that. There you go.
yeah. So, yeah. Carlton, they got to figure out their forward line. I think they're actually edging towards it these days, and as said, it's good. But a few players might be feeling the strain a bit.
Yeah,
Corey Durden's probably another one. Hasn't quite made his opportunities at 23.
it'll be something we touch on in the off season.
Yeah. So
Um,
I don't know. I just thought I'd talk about Carlton a bit more because
I don't know.
it's
I
been a
think we've talked
while.
at length about Carlton this season. We've done a lot of talking about Carlton.
Yeah, I felt like we zoned off for the mid-season when they were pretty crap, but we probably did at the start.
Oh yeah, we slayed them off
Yeah.
pretty well at the start. It was only fair we gave them a bit of a reprieve. But all right, let's
Yeah.
jump over now to the MCG for our next Saturday game, Saturday afternoon game with Hawthorn and Melbourne, and with a 36-point margin, Hawthorn went out 13-14, 92 to 8-8, 56.
Offensive efficiency was the name of the game for the Hawthorn Hawks as they put on some handy percentage in this game that actually gives them a bit of a chance for top four. We were talking about how Hawthorn were once the most likely team to miss out on the 8, and now they might be getting top four. That is the evenness of the competition. But in terms of this match, the Hawthorn Hawks outmarked the Demons on the outside 102 to 68. And whilst in the stoppages, they drew pretty even, as well as the ground ball gets and clearances. Hawthorn scored a solid 7-8 to a paltry Melbourne 2-1. They had very solid efforts inside and outside. The inside midfield was probably pretty good, considering that the Melbourne midfield still got their hands on the ball fair enough. A relatively decent amount. But the main difference was when the ball was going forward, because it was a one-man display of pure dominance. A Jackathy Gunston,
Yes.
who I won't go too much into the stats, but his 10 marks inside 50 was more than Melbourne's whole, which was 8 marks inside 50, and pentuple, or quintuple if you prefer, greater than Melbourne's marks inside 50 leader, Christian Petrarca and Jacob Van Rooyen. So they scored 2, pentuple, quintuple being 5 times.
Yes,
If you
correct.
didn't know that. Blaze has the... sorry, I was just saying I've been giving Blaze a few math questions, so I think I'll just give him the answer.
Oh, no, that one
He's been
I
working
knew.
hard enough.
That one I knew. Don't you worry.
Yeah, well, yeah. Ginnivan pushed up and got a lot of their Hawks ground stuff going. Moore went back to almost a distribution level from last year, and McDonald kept it going on in the outside, whilst Melbourne, on the flip side, were pretty rooted from outside and deep movement. Sharp and Langdon, especially Langdon, really struggle with no marking outlet, and it forced clangers aplenty. I think Langdon had unfortunate 9 turnovers, 9 clanger game, which unfortunate for him. He hasn't had the best season, but this was just a bit of a what do you call it? An exaggerated bad Langdon game.
Yeah.
Melbourne did represent themselves in the inside midfield fairly well, but it was forward dysfunction that really prevented them from capitalising. Whilst, as I said, Hawthorn, had a fair burnt of forward movement, which made the game quite miserable for them. Yeah.
Yeah, Hawthorn just had to put on a bit of a show for Breust after announcing his retirement earlier in that week. He got to kick a lovely goal as well, which was always very good to see. They're not too sure, obviously, if this is going to be his farewell game or not. He did get an opportunity to at least thank the crowd and stuff, which is always very nice to see. So hopefully we do get to see him for either next week or the final series, because we always love to see a celebrated veteran. But in terms of just this game as a whole, I think Hawthorn generally could have maybe tightened up a little bit more in that forward line. I know May and Lever had their work cut out for them in terms of their one-on-one defenses and their intercept work, but the Hawks did at least manage to have 27 scoring shots, which is still better than 16.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, as I said, it was just it was weird. Like, it was very much a thumping, but I think it's just one of those things where I don't know if like Hawthorn needed or not needed to win by more. It was just one of those things where it was like you felt at times, from what I gathered, that Melbourne were trying to do things, but it just felt more offensively was in a massive chasm. And then, as I said, movement-wise was just bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
But
think
because their offense was so bad, you tended to like hyper dismiss the other aspects of the game.
Yeah, I agree.
Which, to be fair, were pretty awful.
Yeah, like I think I only say that I think Hawthorn could have tightened up is just purely for like accuracy purposes, not necessarily percentage purposes. Because I think they're pretty good in terms of percentage. Like they've basically locked in finals anyway, and they're probably more likely than not to get a home final. Although I assume they would prefer the double chance and then just travel anyway, which is, not the be all and end all. But sometimes the double chance is better than just a home final with a one shot chance anyway. But in terms of like Melbourne, they're just, I don't know. Like sometimes they just have a really dominant midfield once again, and then other times it just doesn't seem to want to operate as efficiently as it can.
Well, it's just so hard. It's like they can take it right up to the Bulldogs, who, again, they will destroy a team with weak midfield. Lose 99 to 105. Had actually a fair chance winning that game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not round before that, dominated the Eagles thanks to, in part, to that midfield. And then, as I said, then you have the games like the St Kilda game where we had that implosion, the Hawks game, which was, as I said, not so much an implosion, but it wasn't that great connection. And then obviously the Carlton game before that. So it's like, it's really hard to pinpoint. Every time they look solid, they turn to crap, and every time they look like crap, they turn okay. It's but it's more time in the crap than okay. As I said, though, they're below Port, and yet they have a percentage almost 20 higher than them. Weird.
As we have already know, they currently have Troy Chaplin as their caretaker coach, and he will stay as an assistant coach going into the next season. So they're obviously on the hunt for a new head coach. We talked a little bit about this last week, so we know that there's going to be some changes and likely going to be structural changes in terms of their game style and game plans, going into 2026. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this offseason for the Demons.
Yeah.
So let's jump over to our individuals now. I'm going to start with Cal Shadir, because I love seeing his work rate, and he's added an extra facet to his game, being pressure. Normally he's just, normally a decent tall forward, obviously a young tall forward, But when you see tall forwards, or just tall players in general, start to tackle more and apply a lot of pressure on the ball, either at ground level or just in the air as per normal, it's beautiful. It's always a chef's kiss kind of moment. So he finished with 1-1, 9 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 3 marks with 2 of them inside 50, 2 goal assists, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles with 3 of them inside 50, 24 pressure acts, and 5 ground ball gets. Connor McDonald was fantastic in the midfield. He slotted 1-3 from 28 touches, 6 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 10 marks, 6 inside 50s, 2 goal assists, 12 score involvements, 13 pressure acts, 2 1%ers, 517 meters gained. And then Jack Gunston, of course, keeps winding back the clock as a deep forward. He kicked 7-4. Should have been 11 goals, honestly. Like, he deserved it. But from 14 disposals, 3 contested possessions, 10 marks with all of them inside 50, as you had mentioned, 13 score involvements, 11 pressure acts, and 394 meters gained. For the Demons, Trent Rivers was excellent with ball movement, finishing with 20 touches, 17 of them effective, equating to 85% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 4 inside 50s, 5 tackles, 12 pressure acts, and 538 meters gained. Then Captain Max Gawn had the better of Lloyd Meek, getting 35 hitouts, 12 of them to advantage, and 27 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 12 intercepts, 6 marks, 4 inside 50s, 5 clearances, a behind, 3 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, 8 grab ball gets, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils. On the MRO side of things, Jai Newcomb was fined $1,875 for contact with an umpire, and Tom Sparrow was fined $1,000 for the same thing.
Yeah. Now, a fun little conversation I want to say that's technically just nitpicking you a bit.
Yeah, go on.
You say Jack Constant winding back the clock. Theoretically, this year could argue, well, at least in some statistical metrics, his best year. Despite being sub a number of times, 3.2 goals per game is his highest. This is already his highest goal-kicking year, and that includes games he's played finals before, with 60, 30 behinds as well. Tackling is the only real stat he's dropped off.
Which is kind of expected because of his body. That's why he's playing more deep forward.
His score involvements still about the same. Marks inside 50 is highest as ever been. Arguably, it is actually his best year. There's no winding down the clock. The clock is now.
Well, I mean,
this is Brian Gunston at 33.
We say this about Gunston, and we've kind of been saying it about Pendles for a lot of the season. It's like maybe old is the new young, because like the medical systems and like conditioning and stuff has gotten a lot better over the years. That they're able to, like, some players are able to extend their careers, like Sidebottom, like Pendlebury. Gunston is clearly going for another year, I believe. I think he's already confirmed that he signed a new 1-year deal. So like the fact that these 3 players, some of the oldest in the league. Oh, not to mention we've also got Goldie, potentially going for another season, not confirmed as of yet, but he may have to go for another season. We'll see.
Depends when the injuries come back in.
Yeah. And whether they keep Draper, because that's going to be a big thing as well.
Yeah, I guess.
Like these older players, the fact that they're still playing and playing decently. I say decently because Goldie, can only do so much as a ruck at 37. Like it's maybe old is the new young. Like you don't have to be a young superstar anymore. You're able to somehow create more and do more as a veteran player because you've done this so many times now. You've learnt so much over the journey that you just.
Well, that's what I'm saying is
convert it better.
It's when you look at Gunston, and he is very interesting to watch as a marking forward. I would say one of the most underrated and probably hard to measure ability is his mark timing. Like the amount of times Gunston takes a good defender and just causes them to mistime the ball. For him to just need only slight body contact to get the mark is so amazing. Like it's almost like it's a I'd almost like saying is a timing disruption in terms of it's like it's on a syncopated rhythm. Like when you expect the beat to happen, it doesn't hit. And then all of a sudden you're like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, Gunston's taken a pretty solid mark from what should have been a contested contest. So yeah, as I said, he's a very smart forward, and that does come with age. You know, as I
Yes.
said, a lot of youngsters, I mean, you get told week in, week out as a youngster, if you don't have, like, you know, even if you don't win the marking contest, go as hard as you can at it and just cause disruption. Whereas when you got like an older, still tall forward, like we often say he's like a smallish forward, but he's 193 centimeters, 86 kilograms, you know, so yeah, as I said, it's one of those things where, you know, you just say, you're the one that, you know, chucks in the weird routes. You're the one that chucks in the opponent disruptors, you know. The youngsters will bring the ball to ground, feed it to the tall forwards, small forwards, and you just work out what you can do to offer the switch lead ups. And Hawthorn's been taking full advantage of his leading things. As I said, in terms of on average, he's taking the second most marks inside 50s per game, which is pretty incredible.
He's just creating a lot of headaches. That entire forward line is with how dynamic and versatile it's become.
Yeah, well, as I said, it's not the most on paper threatening. And as I said, I even think some of their smalls have dropped off, but they just keep on getting it done. They know how to push the midfield up. Once Chol went down in form, you know, as I said, Gunston lifted, and Kalshadir, you know, he just keeps on providing. Hasn't really lost a step. As I said, I only kicked one goal this game, but still puts in the pressure, does all the small things right, which is, you know, you don't always expect from a player his age. So yeah.
All right, let's jump over to probably the bigger game of the round, probably the biggest game of the round, actually. Over at the Adelaide Oval, our last Saturday game, where the Crows hosted the Magpies, and with a 3 point margin, the Crows run out 9-5-59 to 8-8-56.
Yes, and all week long we were talking about if the three-pronged attack of Adelaide would be too much for a battered Collingwood defence. And in this failing contest, we found out that the three-pronged defence of Adelaide was too much for Collingwood's attack. A whopping -34 inside 50 differential, 37-71, produced just 15 shots to 22 and 8 set shots to 9. Crows' defence was in full clamp mode, and pressure up the ground forced all of Collingwood's major territory dominance to just result in reasonable points off turnovers and not much else.
Yes.
In the first quarter, Collingwood got a very reasonable 5-1 and looked on fire, where they got 24 of their 71 inside 50s produced for the night. However, retention was an issue. Collingwood's trademark tackling inside 50 was still present, but with the clearance dominance over the Crows, supply was fine, and they were set up well on the outside. Adelaide then got 5-1 to even up the game at halftime, despite Collingwood intercepting well down back. Adelaide still got a lot more bang for buck in their inside 50s. From there on, the arm wrestle was simple. Collingwood will put heavier pressure on the bulk area and force Adelaide into less than desirable kicks, whilst Adelaide would focus their shape deep and prevent Collingwood from generating set shots from their multitudes of entries.
Yes.
With so much back half turnovers. Oh, sorry, what, you were about to say something?
No, just agreeing with you. Go on.
Yeah. With so much back half turnovers, it was amazing the scoreline wasn't higher, but Collingwood's defence returned to form too, with Frampton and Quaynor, even Darcy Cameron, his best efforts were more defensive than tap work statistically. And at the end of the day, Collingwood's inside midfield stepped up their game and got involved, but Adelaide's outside midfield and pressure meant they got more conversion from a tough movement night out, and that was enough to squeeze the win. It wasn't pretty in a tough race, but it put first place in their own hands, which they can now win outright with a win against North. And even if they don't, they've secured top two, which again is very crucial because there's not much difference between 1 and 2. You get any of them, you're pretty happy.
Pretty much, and it's looking like, as we had mentioned just before, Adelaide and Geelong will likely sew up those top two. With Geelong obviously facing Richmond this week. We will talk about that properly in a bit. But in terms of Adelaide, like this was basically a finals game. Like, let's be real. The pressure was intense. The skills from both teams were intense, and it showed the grit and versatility of Adelaide to be able to adapt on the fly and really kind of work around the attack that Collingwood were fighting against them.
Yeah, and I think I also had another game that was a bit like this against GWS, where it was like, well, their offense wasn't going as much as you thought it would, but, they were still able to provide in a very low-scoring game. Obviously, it would be remiss to say, well, first of all, this was just a really close game. And let's face it, Adelaide, for once, got a bit of goal near the end of the game. So, despite that, I think they still did enough. I think just overall, there was just a lot of moments and mistakes that just came from pressure, where you can't really be saying, oh, this, that, or the other decided the game. But, as I said, for the Crows, as I said, like that game earlier in the year against GWS, I've actually found it now. It was 52-34, if you remember that, where we both thought teams were going to score over 100, but they ended up having a really tight contest. As I said, this game was a bit like that. A bit better goal kicking, though, thankfully. And, as I said, Adelaide just seemed fairly well-rounded.
It was also a bit of a wet weather game too, so it probably didn't help in terms of the intensity. It probably made it even more intense. But it was very impressive on both sides. Like, especially that midfield battle was so entertaining to watch, and it just went back and forth so often that the defenses of these teams far outweighed what their offense could really do.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, 71. Again, Collingwood got more inside 50s and score. That's rare, That's, normally it's the other way around, where, a team might get, 30-something inside entries and then only score, 30 because they're all crap and shallow. But, as I said, it's very rare for a team to actually outscore, produce a higher level of inside 50s and score less than them, as well as a team just losing from 71 inside 50s. There are very few teams that have probably lost producing more than 70 inside 50s.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very slim statistic to be a part of. All right, I'm going to jump over to our individuals now, starting with Ben Keays, who was outstanding with pressure for the Crows, finishing with 15 disposals, 9 contested possessions, 4 marks, a goal assist, 2 scoring involvements, 7 tackles, 26 pressure acts, and 7 ground ball gets. Irishman Mark Keane was very, very important in defence, probably one of the best on ground, 100%, probably the best on ground in my personal opinion. That obviously remains to be seen for other people, but he was fantastic. He collected 23 touches, 8 contested possessions, 14 intercepts, 8 marks, 6 1%ers, 5 spoils, 659 metres gained, and a very obvious throw that no one apparently caught on field. Very funny. And then Izak Rankine, I'll touch on a little bit more about him specifically in a moment, but his stats were fantastic on ground. He kicked a goal from 18 disposals, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 4 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 3 score involvements, 3 tackles, 18 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 338 metres gained. On the Collingwood side of things, Jack Crisp was a pressure machine, as he normally is. He kicked a goal from 23 touches, 11 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 4 score involvements, 13 tackles, 9 of them inside 50, 22 pressure acts, and 3 1%ers. And then veteran Scott Pendlebury continues to defy the ages, as we were talking before about winding back the clock, finishing with 24 disposals, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 9 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 3 score involvements, 5 tackles, 17 pressure acts, 5 ground ball gets, and 488 metres gained. On the MRO side of things, Brodie Smith was fined $1,000 for striking Nick Dacos. And then, on top of his regular MRO fines. That's the word I was looking for. There's a bit more news come out about Izak Rankine. He was initially fined $2,875 for both contact with an umpire and for staging, and he's also
Separate events.
Separate events. Yes, they are two separate events, two separate moments during the game. I just put them together for ease of communication.
I mean, it would be, look, as I said, I know we're going to get into a bit more serious, but it would be funny if it was contact with an umpiring, which then he just staged an injury. Like, umpire made contact with me.
It would be, it would be pretty funny. But he has also been sent, he's also under investigation via the AFL over a potential homophobic slur said during the match that was not self-reported. So that makes it, that puts him and the Crows in an interesting position. The Crows, according to reports from journos that are, closer to the clubs, the Crows are expecting a 3 to 5 week suspension. We have a precedent already set from past events, which actually I quickly really need to find, just so I have it as a reference. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, but obviously some of the players in recent history are going off the top of the dome, being Finlayson, Graham, Will Powell, the one who plays for Gold Coast, the one that... Sorry, North Powell. I forget which one you are.
I found the reference list. So, cool. Someone in the Footy Oval Discord server has dubbed this the slur matrix, basically as the precedent set from the AFL from what we've had so far for reports for homophobic slurs. The Finlayson one does not count because that was the very first one on this list. So that set the initial precedent, and they gave him a pretty lenient suspension. I'll be honest, with only 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So if you've been caught saying it only once, any sort of homophobic slur, just for note, not like the F word major one that most people seem to say, a self-report, which was done by Jack Graham, is a 4-match suspension. For multiple instances, it's likely for 5 matches. If it's reported by someone else, a singular instance, which was done, I believe, by Will Powell and Riak Andrew, not Mac Andrew, it's his brother, you're suspended for 5 matches. And for multiple instances, if you're reported by someone else, which was Lance Collard, you are suspended for 6 matches. So going off of the precedent set by the AFL, he should get 5 matches, but I don't expect that to be ruled out completely for the final series. But I don't expect the AFL to do that because it's the AFL. And that is where the issue lies.
Well, as I said, it's one of those things where the AFL is so tentative. They're very much business practice allies, really, where they sort of, they'll listen to do the Pride game, but never really back it in. They'll support Pride in the AFLW, where it's a lot easier because it's just a lot more internal support.
Yes, a lot more LGBT
good representation
as well.
And even in the fans, as I said, it's a lot more of a family atmosphere. So it really only feels like the AFL properly support when it's convenient for them.
Yes.
Obviously, being the business, they're not the only ones to do this. But as I said, it would be very disappointing if this was another time where they went fairly weak.
There was something that I read earlier at work today about how some university or something did an experiment or did a research thing across multiple codes of sport that have pride matches or pride rounds, and had a look at the use of homophobic slurs or other derogatory comments between players and coaches and teams who play in said pride rounds or pride games compared to teams and players that don't. And there is actually a drastic difference in terms of how said people who were involved use less or none at all. Their use of it has decreased massively compared to the players or people that aren't involved. It's kind of just stayed at the same sort of statistical level. And I know it's it's a very, very hard thing to judge because a lot of people aren't obviously going to say it out in public, but It's
Or the other thing too is that with something like that, a lot of those pride matches tend to be inner city sort of
yes,
ones,
that too.
And as I said, when you rule out the inner city ones, then you're like going to country. It's like, well,
And
is it
it's a
because the
lot more
country leagues
prevalent
are?
the more
Yeah,
country you go,
exactly. So,
sadly.
but as I said, the real disappointment is obviously, you can say what you want at AFL level. Obviously, most of us are pushing. I'm not pushing, but you know what I mean. We would like players to be comfortable coming out, but
Yes.
really, as I said, the biggest thing about this is the trickle down to lower leagues because we can go on about like, oh, we need like a player to come in through the leagues, and it's like, oh, I should have. But
Mm.
as I said, when you're a teenager, it is very hard to put yourself in that position. To be able to play AFL football, you have to put a lot of time and effort
Mm-hmm.
into playing in leagues. Nowadays, now there's very uniform. And if there's not an environment where if you feel comfortable being out, you're not going to pursue it. There's probably a loss of a fair few LGBT, mainly G, obviously,
Yes.
athletes because of that pathway that they don't even enter. And, even, I know it affects a lot of rates of picking up casual leagues as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we know that unfortunately they get a reputation for being fairly blokey. So as I said, if you don't cut this stuff out and if you don't go hard at it, you know, it's one of those things where a lot of people will look at it and go, "Yeah, nah, it's just a soft suspension." You know what I mean? It's not real suspension.
Yeah.
Whereas, it's like, well, you need to take it seriously because this has an impact for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it's not as big in the AFL level. As I said, like, I don't think anyone's going to go and say, like, while it's disappointing, I don't think anyone's, like, seriously, directly hurt. Like, yeah, so you doubt that this is a specific homophobic attack, but, you know what I mean? There's just so much trickle down when you're representing such a high quality. And as we've said before, most jobs,
Yes.
you say a slur, you're sacked.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about
Exactly
it.
right.
The fact that they're still being able to play football is already something that's, a societal grace that's just been handed to them for no real good discernible reason. So
Yeah, and it's like these players, they're all role models. They're people that whether they want to be or not, they're people that the young kids look up to and admire.
yeah,
Especially if you are an Indigenous player, mind you. Like, there's a lot less representation of that. Granted, there's probably a lot more now, but like, it's still it's still a minority representation compared to majority of players in the AFL. So it's even more important to properly be like a role model and like a decent person. And obviously,
yeah, and this is one of those
it's
and
hard.
this is one of those things where I think it's also important still to realize that a lot of these AFL players grow up in a bubble.
Yes.
And that's the flip side of forcing him into such narrow pathways is that their social life is so restricted. So it's sort of doublefold is if that culture slips in, they're going to amplify that a lot more. And we've seen that in history with some of the drug prevalence at clubs at certain times.
Yes.
And B, as I said, it's one of those things where, as the AFL, it's important to take that responsibility because you can't just say, oh, these are individual players, we can't have control over them. It's how you promote the game. It's even how you promote how players should approach football. Not so much, I think it's one of those things where you've got to promote balanced life pathways for a lot of these young players, as good and as it is to be very focused on football, focus on the craft at a young age, the AFL needs to put in practices and programs to still keep players' experiences broadened.
Yes.
And that's not just going on holidays in the season. That's, whether it's community work or promoting programs that may at least introduce them into other perspectives.
Yes, absolutely.
That's where I think a lot of it can come from as well.
And it's why I'm very grateful that Richmond are involved in the Midsummer Festival. Midsummer Festival, of course, is very heavily LGBT influenced. It's a very big cultural thing that starts early I think it's like February, late February, sorts of when it is. But Richmond are very much involved in that every year, which I really love. And it's also why I wish that they would expand the Pride game to either swap out the teams or actually just make it an entire round at this point, like they have with the women's. I know it's a lot harder for obvious reasons. We've talked about that already. Um, but I know Richmond would be a team that would fully embrace that. And as a member of said community myself, I would love to feel feel a little bit more supportive by my club. Like as much as I love that the girls have fully embraced it. Our captain, Katie Brennan, is a lesbian, just for note. So we have a lot of representation already. But being able to expand that into the men's and just across the AFL as a whole would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, it's not just for the players, obviously, it's for the people going to the game as
Yes,
well.
it's
Being able to feel safe and supporting your team.
it's not just the players, it's not just the teams, it's the community.
Exactly.
And it's about what that all represents. But speaking of Richmond, sorry for have to go on a really massive tangent on that, but it's a very important topic.
That's all right. We'll probably put that as a little discussion note
yes.
as well.
But speaking of Richmond, that's where I'm going next. We're heading down to our Sunday games, down to Hobart, where North Melbourne hosted Richmond, and with a 48-point margin, North Melbourne won out 20-15, 135 to 13-9, 87.
Yeah, and North might still be disappointing, but they at least showed a ruthless display against the Tigers, who were pretty much just smacked in contest and territory all day long. Despite the scores being closer than the dominance that the Roos were presenting at around halftime, an injury to backline hero, basically, Nick Ralston, seemed to open the floodgates in the third quarter, giving the Tigers an 8-2 to 1-6 stomping, as North really never looked back from there. Richmond just never got hands on the ball. Possession differential of negative 134 gave the Roos 20 more inside 50s, which they generated 37 shots to 25.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing for the Tigers, surprisingly, they converted okay. And if they didn't, it would have been an absolute bloodbath. But both teams average about 12% higher scores per inside 50 rate compared to season average. So for both teams, not too bad. However, leaving the dual threats of LDU and Shizel unopposed left them with 15 scoring involvements apiece. Round highest with Mackay, who kicked 7 off his own boot to boost his tally. So they just got involved in everything. You'll go more into their stats. I don't know if you cover both, but
I don't have Nanks, but I do have Sherry's, so I'll cover
that. Nanks, you mean LDU?
No, I'd say I don't even have LDU. I've got Shizel though.
Oh, I just didn't mention that. Yeah, Sherry proved his worth against Nankervis. Was solid with pressure on the ground, absolutely insane. And Trembuff scoring well again. Whitlock and O'Sullivan getting involved. It was also a good day out to be a young Joey on the field.
Yes.
And they at least proved that they had spine and talent to work with, even if it was a trying but very scattered Richmond side.
To North's forward credit specifically, they structured up really well when Cam Zohar went out with injury in the second quarter. Like the fact that they were able to restructure around that and pretty much it didn't help that when Vlosten went down, we lost our hard intercept power. But like the fact that they were able to restructure really well without their basically number one key forward at the time because Larky wasn't playing, and still have fantastic scoring, fantastic leads, and just overall very good conversion. It was very impressive to see. And like the fact that, for North, you wish you could be able to do this more often against other teams, and that you didn't really just want to have to do it against a bottom 4 team alongside yourself. But it's better than nothing. It does show that they have learnt a lot over this season, and that they are able to at least show promising signs. But whether that executes well into 2026 will remain to be seen.
Yeah, and as I said, it's sort of a bit of a how you want to interpret it, because again, it's really just North Melbourne. They distribute by hands a lot to their biggest players, and again, because I don't think you've particularly put it into your notes, it should be said with Harry Sheasel, 30 handball received. I'm going to guess that's the most handballs receives in the competition. Unfortunately, it's a stat that hasn't actually been measured for all that long. But 30 is pretty insane.
It
Like,
is.
as I said, so that's what, as I said. So for North, when they are able to win the contest, they're, they can get their game going. It's just the consistency in being able to win that contest. But as I said, at least this game proved that when it gets going, when they can win the ground level contest, when they're able to even out the contest, that they may actually have a lot more improvement than what this season has been showing
Yes.
on scoreboard.
Yes, 100%. And in terms of just Richmond, I did go into this game with a little too much faith. I really wanted to hope that we could have a better showing than what we did against them at the MCG a couple of months ago. Sadly, it was not meant to be, but that's rebuilding side. It's what you kind of expect sometimes, and I'm okay with the fact that we kind of resigned ourselves to losing our last 2 games of the season, essentially. Last 3 if you count St Kilda as well.
Yeah,
but that's okay. But I'll jump over to my individuals now because I have a little bit of information to get through. I am going to start with Harry Sheasel, of course, equaling Tom Mitchell's all-time disposal record. He also kicked 2-2, mind you, but 54 disposals, with 36 of them effective, equating to 66.7% efficiency. He did desperately try to get another one in the last 10 seconds, but just couldn't get his hands to it. He also finished with 16 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 marks, 8 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 15 score involvements, 5 tackles, 22 pressure acts, 13 ground ball gets, and 683 meters gained. Just for note, Tom Mitchell's stats in the game that he did also get 54. This was against Collingwood, round 1, 2018, mind you. It was 54 disposals, 38 of them effective, equating to 70.4% efficiency, 27 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 8 marks, 8 inside 50s, 9 clearances, a goal assist, 9 score involvements, 15 pressure acts, 20 ground ball gets, and 728 meters gained. So fairly comparable. Just slightly different slightly better stats on one side, slightly worse stats on the other side. Very, very comparable though. Paul Curtis is my next player. He was very lethal up forward, kicking 5-1 from 15 touches, 13 of them effective, equating to 86.7% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 of them inside 50, 3 clearances, 9 score involvements, 3 tackles, 15 pressure acts, and 3 1%ers. Ruckman Tristan Sherry was a pressure beast in that midfield, getting 40 hitouts, 10 to advantage, and 22 disposals, 16 contested possessions, 6 clearances, 8 score involvements, 18 tackles, 28 pressure acts. Then over on the Richmond side of things, Maurice Rioli was excellent with pressure, kicking a goal from 11 touches, 5 contested possessions, 7 tackles, and 23 pressure acts. And James Trezise was also solid through our defense, slotting a goal from 18 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 3 small rolls, 3 tackles, 15 pressure acts, and 3 1%ers.
Yeah, and I will say it is actually interesting how champion data and all that sort of rate these sort of games, because it's interesting. Surprisingly, I was just curious of which one was the highest player rating one. Player rating being fairly uniform throughout the years. Tom Mitchell only got a player rating of 14.2 for that 52 game performance, which was, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, 8th, 9th best for the night. For reference, the highest player rating game was a 39.9 by Lance Franklin when he slotted 8 goals.
Oh, yeah, that'll do it.
Against, it was against West Coast.
Oh.
Whereas for this one, it was I think the 3rd highest rated player for the night. Oh, sorry, 4th, with 20.1 for his 54. So again, as much as we say this is like a midfield based thing, it shows how much it's rated on score involvement, and B, as I said, when you get fed, it tends to limit the amount of points you can get. But it's still very important to have that person to feed to you. Like, as I said, I think Zach Merritt has been far more useful when players have been feeding him more than he needs to win the ball himself. So, as I said, I think it's one of those things that you can't just like go off pure play ratings. It's how to get your team playing the best available football.
Yes.
And as I said, I think this was like far in the right direction. Like, Sheasel won't have. I think Sheasel will have more impactful games in his career than his 54 disposals. But this was just like a ridiculous part of North just being able to play a game style that they want to play. Just exaggerated by the fact that Richmond really can't stop handball chains. It's been one of their weaknesses all year.
Yes, it
They
has.
can get pretty sliced and diced.
Yeah, agreed. And just on the injury side of things, Cam Zohar went out with an ankle injury. I believe he's been ruled out for the rest of the year. Same with Nick Vlosten, who also went out with an ankle. Vlosten got very. Oh, actually, sorry. His has been changed to officially a leg injury. Thankfully, not an ACL or an MCL or PCL or anything like that. So it's thankfully on the better side of a leg injury. But he had obviously ruled out for the rest of the season. And then Luke Traynor was a late change with hamstring tightness. He will likely be the one to come in for Vlosten this week. Then on the MRO side of things, because they have just come through, Jacob Hopper has been fined $3,750 for tripping Harry Sheasel in the third quarter.
What?
That's it.
Got him caught on the hop.
Hey, very nice.
Thanks, man.
All right, let's jump over now to the SCG, where the Swans hosted the Cats, and with a 43-point margin, the Cats won out 16-15, 111 to 10-8, 68.
Yes, unfortunately, Swans are dead in the final race. Last year's minor premiers at least tried to prove that they weren't fully cooked against one of the more offensively ruthful teams. Google Docs is trying to tell me that ruthful isn't a word, but I disagree. That aside, it fell apart in the second half as a 2-4 to 8-8 second half left the Swans looking like limp ducks. Swans had the better of the territory, but just couldn't prevent the Cats from turning their intercepts to score. I think Cats had like 75% up, 75 points off intercept. But the interesting thing is a lot of their intercepts are actually quite deep. Defenders in Jack Henry, Tom Stewart, and Sam de Koning were the main pill stealers. And since movement wasn't too bad, they turned a decent amount of those deep intercepts a score, as those three actually had a decent 13 cumulative score involvements, which is pretty good for players based so far back. Blakey, on the flip side, seemed to be the only real threatening movement the other way, from what I could tell from the stats. Again, didn't watch this game, and gave the Swans some zip. But the absence of ground level play meant that a lot of movement wasn't being converting into score, and that was the main problem rather than the Swans not getting it inside 50 enough. Because as I said, they had possession. They just didn't quite convert as much as they should have. Meanwhile, Geelong's forward line, Neil and Manor, gave the Swans backline some headaches, leading well and converting some tough shots whilst being fed such a wide distribution. Whilst being fed by such a wide distribution of players. Geelong kept it varied and kept it lethal, whilst the Swans, after halftime, just really applied very minimal forward half effort, and they just got dominated in the contest until they submitted.
Yeah, it was a really weird game from the Swans, because you kind of granted, we knew obviously that at this point it was technically still feasible, but they're very, 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 very unlikely for them to make finals. We weren't really expecting them to succeed in that case.
No, they were ruled out before the game.
They were? Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, then, like, we still kind of expected them to make this close. Like, we know they'd shown some very, very good signs over the past couple of months. Like, their second half, granted, a lot of that was thanks to Brodie Grundy and Isaac Heaney. They've had fantastic.
They had an impressive game to keep them in the finals.
That's right.
Albeit very unlikely. but then results. Sorry, that was a win against Brisbane, to be clarified. But then results meant that they were locked out at that point.
That's right. Um, we still expected them to have a very solid game against Geelong. They normally match up fairly well against Geelong for the most part, but it just felt like they were. Granted, I know they didn't have Grundy. They had Peter Laddams in the ruck this week. And Heaney was kept fairly quiet for a lot of this game, which is normally where a lot of their midfield to forward conversion comes from, apart from Golden, of course, who's normally very strong on the wing. It's just, they got shut down really, really easily by the Cats.
Yeah, it's weird. I heard Heaney was tagged, and yet I didn't actually find if and who was actually tagging him. I heard Gordon was actually paid a bit of attention. That's where Ocean Mullen went. But,
yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I think it might have just been a pure, just effort-bodied work midfield performance that got him that win. As I said, the Cats are very, as I said, they're not the clearance heaviest team, but they'll have a lot of structure in their center work.
Well,
they are very disciplined.
They've just continued to show why they've been so good for so long. And I mean, we're on Chris Scott's 15th season as coach at this point, and he continues to surprise at how adaptive, how he's been able to adapt this Cats roster over the years.
Yeah, like it's gone from a lot of intercept defense and just defensive prowess. Obviously, the mid-2000s Geelong, 2010s, I should say, to going to this offensive dynamo of a team. As I said, they were apparently too old until they figured out that they could just squeeze the juice out of players whilst just bringing up a lot of youngsters. Like, it's the time thing, like age-old thing is like, you don't need to have the best draft picks and the best recruits if you have enough support to get the best out of them early. Then they're not so much playing to build confidence.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing to expand on skills because they've already got confidence around them. Takes all the pressure off, and they're able to build a bit more.
Yeah, this is one of the teams that really does often have selection pressure because everyone is so talented and they've structured insanely well that spots are always hard to compete for.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, Sydney didn't play too well. They just sort of faded out. So, yeah, as I said, it's weird. Like, this sort of Sydney team, you think would still improve next year. Obviously, a few injuries. They would want to get their sorted out, obviously. And again, they've been one of the more dismal. They've been almost Carlton level at generating ground level shots, unfortunately.
Well, I think the reality of it is that this is probably the most disappointing team for 2025, considering they were grand finalists.
There's a lot of competition for that.
Oh yeah, I know, but like
Carlton and Sydney are Sydney.
When you compare it to the past 12 months, like Carlton was kind of already in the same position, just slightly worse.
Yeah,
because they barely scraped through to finals last year. Again, same
injured debuggery.
Yeah, exactly. That was the Patrick Cripps show for those last two rounds, and then they just got decimated by Brisbane, which we all expected.
Yeah, as I said, it was just like one of those things where it was like, and obviously Port being second on the ladder to where they are now.
Yes,
they were sort of expecting a bit of a drop off. It was just compounded by injury.
Actually, yeah, Port might take that spot, to be honest. No offense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You've kind of resigned yourself to that fact at this point, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, it's just gone from bad to miserable. So, anyway, I don't really care if people want to say it Port, people want to say it Sydney.
Well, we'll figure that out during the off season, or
or
even during the bye round. All right, let's jump over to
we'll probably cover
our individuals. Starting with Sean Manor, he was amazing all over the ground. He kicked 3-3 from 19 disposals, 7 marks with 4 of them inside 50, 4 clearances, 9 score involvements, 7 tackles, 22 pressure acts, and 492 meters gained. Bailey Smith was electric with movement. I don't talk about him all that much because we already know he's a superstar in that midfield, but he stood out the most, I think, in that midfield for the most part. With 30 touches, 14 contested possessions, 6 marks, 7 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 9 score involvements, 4 tackles, 20 pressure acts, 12 ground ball gets, 509 meters gained. And then Reece Stanley, I thought, had a very solid outing. getting 33 hitouts, 5 of them to advantage, and 14 disposals, 5 contested possessions, 7 marks, 4 clearances, 5 score involvements, 9 pressure acts, 5 1%ers, and 5 spoils. Angus Sheldrick continues to impress for the Swans. I think he's in one of their most improved players, collecting 21 touches, 19 of them effective, equating to 90.5% efficiency. 13 contested possessions, 6 clearances, 5 score involvements, 5 tackles, 14 pressure acts, and 12 ground ball gets. And then Peter Laddams also competed well, mostly against Reece Stanley, of course, getting 35 hitouts, 6 of them to advantage, and kicked 2-1 from 17 disposals, 13 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 10 clearances, 7 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, 3 1%ers, and 3 spoils. And on the MRO side of things, Shannon Neal has been suspended for 1 match for rough conduct against Jake Lloyd. So they will not have him. I assume they probably just let him go. They won't appeal it. I don't think they should anyway, really. Let him have the week off against Richmond and let Jeremy Cameron kick 100.
Yeah, I just don't really know, actually, any of the MRO decisions because I didn't actually get a chance to look at any of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this one was fairly warranted. It was a high hit, a little careless. So it makes a lot of sense. It's not too bad.
Jeremy Beramy, no, 1 shot, 1 behind.
Yeah, he was actually held really well.
It was on him, do you know?
I believe it was the lizard, off the top of my head.
Really?
That's off the top of my head though. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, he was shut down very well.
Although this is saying McCartan, but fan footy's pretty liberal.
I believe McCartan started on him, but they would have rotated around.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, whatever they did was effective, so congrats to them.
I don't know what his tally currently is for the Coleman or just his goals in total, but that means if he really wants his 100, he has to kick like 20-something goals against Richmond's tall defense, which means he has to contend with Bolter and with Miller and with Tyler Young.
Yeah. It's possible, but not 20 goals.
It's
still possible for him to get it in the finals.
Yes, everyone is expecting him to maybe get it in the finals, but he's also up against a lot tougher defenses in the finals. So,
and hopefully for him, Geelong would have to make the grand final.
Of course, yes, that too. All right,
on to 2 ruckmen in your individuals, Blazy.
I know it's not very often that I do that, but I generally thought that they both played decent games. Especially when, Peter Laddams is like the second ruck to Brodie Grundy, who I have talked about at length over the past 6 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's just at some point, you got to assume that one ruckman eats the other ruckman for dominance. You got to...
Honestly, that happened between Sherry and Nank, because Nank did not play all that well, to be honest.
Yeah. I will say, obviously, Laddams probably provided a bit more up forward as well. So
he did.
He
was very much a floating ruck up the forward line mostly. Especially because they didn't really have all that much going for them up there. So it was good to see him play a bit more of a well-rounded game. All right, jumping over to our last game, probably the easiest game we have to cover for the week, and it is the Bulldogs hosting the West Coast Eagles at Marvel, and with a 94-point margin, the Dogs obviously won out, 19-12 to 126 to 4-8-32.
An absolute domination by the Doggies as they were trying to conquer the West. Part 1 of 2 is done to get themselves into the finals. But with 58 to 42 entries, you would have thought that the Eagles may have been able to conjure up some score, but a 36 to 15 shot game with almost none of the Eagles shots being close to goal. This game was just about how deep the Doggies could send it, with how little the Eagles were getting with their limited ball movement. Thanks primarily to Jack Graham, the Eagles actually held on to the Doggies clearance count. But again, like the other game, the stoppage scores were 7-5 to 0-5, with 3-2 coming from the centre bounce for the Dogs. Are you going to come in with a point, or?
No, you're good.
No, all good. O'Donnell and Bustlinger proved that it wasn't just the Eagles' defence having good young defenders, as they both had really good game, and they let the lobster monster and otherwise impressive Job Shanahan, who probably would have gone all right if he could kick a bit straighter. Few tough shots, though. despite the scoreline, some of the shape from the Eagles was okay. But they just managed as they managed a few intercepts, but their forward line was just abysmal, which led any decent movement just end up further into the Dogs' hands again, where they went in hard.
They did. It was just an overall dominant performance. They did slow down a little bit in that third quarter. I did keep an eye on that very intently. But otherwise, it was just a very resounding performance from the Dogs. Not that they needed the percentage. They were already one of the better percentage teams in the top 8. Miles better than Freo, mind you. They've got like 0.32% higher, I believe, something like that. So it's not something that they definitely needed, but a resounding win is always good for the morale. Now it's just all about going on to pretty much onto the Fremantle game this week, where it's do or die. So there isn't really much to really cover from this game, to be honest.
No, it's just the sort of forward half game smashing you would expect from the Bulldogs. But yeah, as I said, it was just like at least the Eagles played well against Adelaide, because this could have been a really ugly back-to-back. But it's just a one future game at the end of the year, which fans will probably forget about soon enough.
Although
the sweet release of round 24 is almost upon Eagles fans.
Yes, it is. Although for the Dogs, though, they did get to see a new facet to their forward line with Jordan Croft coming in his debut game. I do have him in my notes, but just to specifically call him out on some other stuff, I thought he worked really, really well with their forward line in rotation. It was very, very solid with leading and conversion and playing in packs. So he's clearly been working really hard in the VFL to kind of hone those skills in, and it generally does like show an extra kind of headache, not just for like forward selection, but like just for other teams, because now they have so many interesting tall forwards to be able to play.
Yeah, remember when we thought they weren't going to get enough goal scoring because Jamari Ugle-Hagan was out for the probable season? And now it's just, so what? You know what I mean? Their system
Aaron Norton has stepped up massively. Sam Darcy
Yeah.
has been incredible. Now they've got Jordan Croft as well, another tall forward option. Like they've become really flexible, and it's crazy. Not to mention they've also got like, you know, their smaller forwards in like Riley West, Ed Richards when he pushes up. You know, you got the Bont as well, who likes to suddenly float.
Sure that they're the third highest scoring team. I think there may be 3 teams averaging over 100 points this season, which is Adelaide, Geelong, and the Bulldogs. Maybe Adelaide's not there, but
that does track.
Pretty sure something ridiculous like that.
That does track off the top of my head. You're probably not far off.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump over to the individuals whilst you're trying to find the statistic. Starting with Ed Richards, who got involved with scoring and was very entertaining. He finished with 2-2 from 25 disposals, 9 test possessions, 4 inside 50s, 7 score involvements, 6 tackles, 29 pressure acts, 31 percenters, and 5 40 meters gained. Luke Cleary was solid defensively. He finished with 16 touches, 14 of them effective, equating to 87.5% efficiency, 6 in test possessions, 5 intercepts, 6 marks, 2 score involvements, 2 tackles, 5 ground ball gets, 6 1%ers, and 5 spoils. And then debutant Jordan Croft, as I had just mentioned, was absolutely outstanding. He slotted 2-1 from 10 disposals, 9 contested possessions, 4 marks, with all of them inside 50 and 3 of them contested marks, 6 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, and 5 ground ball gets, with 3 of them inside 50. Over on the Eagles side of things, Elijah Hewitt was good with pressure, collecting 16 touches, 5 of them contested, 5 inside 50s, 3 clearances are behind, 2 score involvements, 6 tackles, 20 pressure acts, and 5 ground ball gets. And Noah Long did well, kicking 1-2 from 11 disposals, 4 contested possessions, 2 clearances, 3 score involvements, 4 tackles with 3 of them inside 50, and also 20 pressure acts. And a shout out to Eagles debutant Jacob Newton, who finished with a disposal and inside 50, a tackle, a pressure act, and 41 meters gained. Because I don't think they really threw him out there until like the last 10 minutes or so. Which, I mean,
yeah, it was pretty late.
There wasn't really much for him to really do either. They were just getting decimated, let's be real. On the injury side of things, though, Lachie McNeil went out for the Dogs with a corked hip. Hopefully on the minor side of things, but probably will not play against Freo. And then on the MRO side of things, Clay Hall was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire, and Jordan Croft was also fined $1,000 for the same thing.
Yeah, and just to confirm, it's actually Adelaide that's just under when you combine their average goals and behinds. They're at 98.2, so they need a tiny bit of a boost to get to the 100 points per game, where it would be where some Bulldogs in front. I quickly do the math. I sort of deleted what it was.
No, you're right. You got a second.
61.6, 96.6 in terms of goals, add
Mhm.
12.1, which is about 118
Ish.
108
Okay.
ish points.
That's still over 100,
Okay.
which is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to briefly touch on the ladder. I'm only going to touch on the top 9, of course, because that's all that matters now. So there has been a couple of changes, with Brisbane moving into 3rd, Collingwood dropping down to 4th, Hawthorn jumping up to 5th, Giants up to 6th, Fremantle down to 7th, the Dogs in the top 8, and the Suns dropping down to 9th. So just for note, there are 4 teams currently in the top 8, all on 60 points, varying levels of percentage, with those being Collingwood, Hawthorn, the Giants, and Freo. And the Dogs and the Suns rounding out 8th and 9th on 56 points, but the Dogs with the highest percentage, so 3rd highest percentage out of the top 9, which will allow them to jump immediately to 4th. Obviously, provided the rest of the teams lose. That's likely not going to happen with the Giants, Hawthorn, and Collingwood, of course. But it does put them in a really interesting position in terms of whether they get a double chance or whether they even get a home final.
Yeah, no, so there's still a lot of swinging that can happen. As I said, there is that ridiculous formula where the Bulldogs get into the top 4. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it feels even tighter than it was last season. And again for Freo, it's win and you're in. The exact same situation as last year.
Yep.
So,
not even a home game to try and get it to.
No, and we are about to touch on that with our look ahead to round 24. So we're going to start off with our Thursday night clash at the MCG with Essendon hosting Carlton.
Slightly less ladder implications with this one.
Oh, there's
I don't even think
0.
Oh no, wait, Essendon had their first round. Carlton don't.
Yes.
Surprisingly close game for a chunk of these contests. Again, Carlton with their midfield probably opens up a few avenues. I think Carlton have been legit impressive.
Yep.
But it's about their defense. Essendon making the most of their entries because they've proved that they can get there. They're able to generate a bit of an intercept. They can actually get a few. So I'd imagine it'll be like a lethargic Carlton win where they might just get a bit ahead and then it just goes on cruise control where Essendon try and nip at the heels. Won't put the margin that big, but yeah, as I said, I would, from the light, okay form of Carlton, I think that's enough to get them the win. And unfortunately, Essendon just won't get that late win, even though they've been threatening to for a few of these games.
Yeah, I think Carlton kind of overall just will finish off the season with a win here. It'll be good for them. I guess it'd be good for both teams, obviously, finish the season with a win. But I think with the performance that they had last week, it's definitely a better sign for them to finish with multiple wins at the end of the season and kind of come away with it feeling a lot better than how they felt going into the season.
Yeah, they just want to prove that there is a chance for a jump back up the ladder, that this is like maybe a 1-year blip that we're seeing from a team like Adelaide.
Yes.
I don't think that's necessarily the case, but they'll be wanting to believe that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, next is a first of 2 Friday night clashes, starting back at the MCG with Collingwood and Melbourne.
Yeah, as I said, you might think, oh, it should be an easy win by Collingwood. But remember, this was a 1-point contest on the Queen's birthday, and that was up against a bit of a wasteful Melbourne. So, although I think that Collingwood's definitely improved a tiny bit from that, well, not improved, but I guess improved. They didn't start off the year all that threatening. They sort of leaned into it. Melbourne have gotten that a lot crapper. Again, yeah, there are scenarios where Melbourne come back, but you just got to think Collingwood would be. I hate using the terms hungry for wins and all that, but in the context of this, before finals, you've had a lot of losses recently. It's just one where you got to have the leaders come together and like, okay, we're gonna really try dominate this game, reclaim top four, and put a lot of the back season behind us.
Yes. Yeah, they're in this situation where if they want to assure up a top four spot, they need to win this game, have that double
Mhm.
chance. Otherwise, if they don't, they could drop to as low as seventh, which really puts them in danger territory because they may have to travel for that first week, which we all know they don't like doing. um, and it also depends on like injuries as well. Like they still might not even get Howe back, for an example. Bobby Hill is still touch and go. So it's all very. There's still a couple of players that they are missing. Granted, their performance against the Crows was very, very good for them because it showed their adaptability as well and the fact they're able to still play tight contests. But they're still missing some key injured players that they could really, really use come finals.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where, it's sort of the tough thing where it's like you don't want to use that as an excuse. Collingwood actually have a fair amount of injuries. It's just a lot of their depth players. And I mean like raw depth players, so
Yeah,
that won't come into an impact until later. But yeah, as I said, the ones that they have are still fairly important. But you would hope that they just find other ways, and this is a chance to be able to reconsolidate, especially since Melbourne, when they're not on their game, therefore a bunch of arse. So
yeah, agreed.
good chance to
Um,
consolidate.
yeah, I would definitely be leaning towards Collingwood for a tip, but I would like to see Melbourne definitely try and take it to them again, and maybe even cause that upset.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of an
All right.
upset, I would love to see an upset here. We're jumping now over to the Adelaide Oval, where Port Adelaide will host the Suns, the first of two Suns games for this week, because obviously they have that rescheduled game from opening round. By the way, get rid of opening round. It clearly did not help this year. Um,
Uh,
I genuinely would love to see the Suns lose, just because it really makes things more difficult and more interesting.
wow.
I expect them to win,
I mean, true.
but I genuinely would love to see either Port win overall or just make it really, really difficult and make it really, really hard for the Suns to make their other game
Mm.
even harder.
Well, as I said, it was Port had that massive dominance against the Suns, which ended last year when the Suns ended up being 14-point winners against a quite wasteful Port Adelaide.
Mm.
Sort of put their season in jeopardy until they randomly started to finish second. Last year was also crazy. It is amazing how much top eight variability we've had in the shape of 2 years.
Yes.
However, man, that backline's going to be hard. Port, they've got to tighten up the midfield. If they can't stop it from the contest, then the Suns will just romp away with score. But if they even that out a bit, prevent some transition. The Suns have shown their hand of where they're weak are, which is why I don't rate them too much for going deep in finals.
Mm-hmm.
Port may be able to take a chance, but like again, it's sort of like the Freo game where a lot of things would have to go in their way, and even like a lot of things did go their way, and they still managed to go up short. I guess Port Adelaide had those couple of injuries late, so I think that's maybe a bit harsh, but
Yeah.
yeah, as I
Yeah,
said,
I kind of.
for Carlton though, if they have such a bad clearance game like they did against them, they will be absolutely smashed again.
Yeah, I expect the Suns to win this outright, but I would genuinely love to see the upset just because it makes everything so much more interesting.
I mean, it would be great. Farewell, Boak. Farewell, Pinkley, because man, if they get smashed, I do not want to see the Adelaide crowd. Like, this is a game where I might turn it off with 5 minutes ago because I don't really want to see how the
Oh,
Port crowd react if they are salty. I think this
yeah.
could be actually a dark day for Port if things don't go their way. And I just don't think that should happen. Like, it's sport. There's other things in life.
Agreed.
People are human. Carry
Agreed.
on.
I agreed. All right. Jumping over to the Saturday games now. Over at Marvel Stadium, where North Melbourne will host the Adelaide Crows. And we're all pretty much in consensus that the Crows will shore up top spot with a win here. But I would love to see North make it competitive.
Yeah, I think North have just got to sort of run with them. They've been okay at that the last few times against. In fact, a lot of the scorelines have been eerily similar, with Adelaide being around point winners. Yeah, as I said, North just try offensively. You think Adelaide would tear apart their defense just with the height. That's going to be hard to match up against. But what we don't want to see from North is them going, we've got our win, we'll just shut up shop for the year. You know what I mean? You really, at this point, there's no excuses. You have to be trying week in, week out for back-to-back efforts. You can't just put the young team excuse out. I know it's going to be tough, and they may get beaten solidly, but there's just got to be a more respectful way to go about it. Again, that's being harsh before that's actually played, so yeah, but again, you've got to be accountable. But I think they've got the possibility of being accountable.
Yes, I agree. I think North have learned a lot, especially over the past couple of weeks, in terms of when they've gone up against their tougher opponents. I definitely think that they could make it interesting against the Crows. Obviously, I think the Crows will win outright, and they hopefully win by a big. You assume to win by a big margin. But being able to play the Crows honest, and just being able to have more of an impact around stoppage as well, stop their clearance winners, will definitely make it a lot more difficult for Crows to enter their forward 50, but I still, again, expect them to win this pretty much outright.
Yeah.
All right, jumping over to our next game, which is pretty much going to be the same as the game we just talked about. At the MCG, this is across town, Richmond will host Geelong. Geelong expected to shore up second position with a win against Richmond. I'm not expecting us to play this close. I'm expecting a bloodbath, to be honest. But
yeah, I'm sort of leaning
if we're able to,
especially if Flaston's out.
As much as I would love to see Jeremy Cameron kick a massive bag, I also want to see our defense really shore up against him and just show that we can have still some decent promise going into the off season.
I think Izak will be using that. It's hey, everyone's expecting Jeremy Cameron to get a big bag. You're a young team, but we know how much talent we've got in there. We know what we've been doing at various parts during the year. So, as I said, I do think they'll legitimately try their hardest not to get blown out. That being said, man, just the way that Geelong's been slicing and dicing, consistently just thrashing lower level teams this back half of the season, so systematically too. It's just pretty hard to see them not. As I said, more competent teams have gone up and been absolutely spanked by Geelong.
Yeah.
So,
it's also not a pretty sight, the fact that we've dropped back into the bottom two with North winning over us. So,
as I said,
statistics are even worse right now.
Yeah, it's probably one of the bigger disappointments from this last bit of the season, even though I think they've been okay. As I said, just
I expect Geelong to try and play this mostly bruise-free as well. They don't really want any major injuries going into the finals, but we'll see.
I don't know.
All right, jumping over.
As I said,
go on.
As in, I don't know if Geelong really go into bruise-free. You know what I mean?
Oh no, yeah, they won't be
they just dominate.
Super.
I think Collingwood. Collingwood. They're just they can play that style of play anyway, so. They'll probably be still similar to how you've seen them. Just, probably few less tackles inside 50s, maybe a few less stoppage tackles. Maybe you just give it to harden up players that are going to put their body on the line anyway. Maybe it'll just be a Tommy Atkins 12 tackles, next best 5 sort of thing.
Potentially. I mean, that's kind of how a lot of their pressure has been lately, just throughout the season anyway. Yeah. Tom Atkins has been fantastic at that.
Exactly.
All right, jumping over now to the west, over at Optus Stadium, where the Eagles will host the Swans.
Yeah. Again, Swans probably looking for a bit of outlet. Fair to say, especially their tolls being a bit out of form. They'll probably want to look at rack up a score.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not actually sure. I think there's some aspects where West Coast might be able to go okay. They're actually decent last year when Sydney were at full strength. They had a 26-point loss. Sort of kept with them on the outside. It's just A, clearance is going to be another big thing, depending if Grundy comes back, and B, yeah, unless the Eagles are playing every line, you just expect Sydney to outmuscle.
Do you expect the Eagles to try and like run with or shut down players on both Heaney and Goulden, since that's where a lot of their supply to the forward
I
line
don't think
comes
they'll
from?
play any run.
Oh no,
They won't play any run with.
Yeah, it's just a theory because like you want to kind of see them add extra facets to the game, but you don't really expect it in round 24.
I think they'll just put Hawthorn like Heaney because, as I said, he's probably the more, not so much a defensive, but just more of a gut runner midfield. Yeah. And that sort of, if he goes into the back line, that's where Hoff sort of grew up anyway. So, yeah, but I don't think it'll be a hard tag necessarily. It'll just be a more defensively accountable person. But again, West Coast tend to vary a lot of midfield rotations anyway. So they'll try and do it by variation. But said, like, I think honestly, this could be the closest of the Saturday games. You know what? Put it as my, like, we've retired it. It's going out of retirement for one last game. West Coast Sydney, closest to the Saturday games. Book it in for my weird prediction of the week.
Yeah, all right. Well, we'll take a look at that next week and see where the margins lay up. All right, jumping over to our Sunday games, where this is where the games of the rounds lie, because all three of these could be absolute bangers. Starting with the Giants and St Kilda up in Sydney at NG Stadium.
Strange bedfellows, Giants and St Kilda. St Kilda being one of the most variable bottom 8 teams, and Giants being, bottom 9 teams, and Giants being one of the most variable top 8 teams. You never know when the offense is going to fire. You never know when the defense is going to fire, but something will happen during this game. Again, St Kilda will have to find interesting avenues to score. You think that Sam Taylor, without too many hard tasks, will be able to drift off a bit, rack up a few intercepts. St Kilda have got to prevent a lot of movement, which they're okay at.
They have been pretty decent.
With forward half pressure, which they've been less okay at. Yeah, so it's just about making the most of their opportunities, not allowing that back half run. St Kilda, yeah, they've sort of got to beat the Giants at their own game. I think they've got to generate a lot of back half. Whether that's, obviously your main route with
Naz?
Mullet dude. No.
Sinclair?
Sinclair.
Who doesn't have a mullet anymore?
Doesn't he?
I'm pretty sure he cut it off this year.
I haven't just Saint games in a while. Crazy. No wonder Saints are crap. Yeah. So, yeah, Naz has been still in the center, hasn't he?
He's been rotating center and half back mostly, still. But
anyway.
Center and wing, you know what I mean. Around that sort of area.
Anyway, the Saints, Giants actually like to stifle up the wing, so their longer kick approach might actually benefit. So, again, might be a bit of a, I wouldn't say a trap game, but you've just got to be accountable. Otherwise, I think, Giants, they've been really good on the outside. Their tolls have been fairly accountable. They might even play Hogan if he is well enough. But, yeah.
Yeah, it
should be an easy win.
This is definitely a very variable game, but you kind of expect the Giants to take the win off of St Kilda here. And it would help them potentially shore up a top 4 spot. Again, that'll depend on the other games as well coming up. Because Giants in 6th, Dogs in 8th, Fremantle 7th, Brisbane 3rd, Hawks 5th, and not to mention the Suns still playing 2 games. Like this period, this Sunday and obviously the following Wednesday for the bonus game, is going to be very, very interesting to see where the top 8 finishes up.
And I think the other interesting thing is this is sort of a an understudy performance for a lot of the GWS Giants, because they've got a lot of players coming back. Jack Buckley, they could play for finals. Brent Daniel, they can play for finals. Josh Kelly, Jesse Hogan still to come back. Even some of the fringier players like McMullen, Stringer, of course, got to come back.
Yes.
So you know what? Some of those players will be thinking, "Hey, I've got to like do the best I can to like put myself in the mix for finals."
Yeah, this could be a real pressure test just for the players on field, as to whether they'll be able
And
to
we've
keep
seen
their
those
spots.
players list, you know, as I said, like Harvey Thomas, what was the other one? Not Angove.
Royston?
Angwin.
Angwin, yes, as well.
Yeah, Royston even, Grzuski.
Mm.
So obviously Grzuski a lot likely to just go out the way for Hogan, but you never know.
Yeah, there's a ton of options that the Giants currently have, especially if they do get their injuries back in time.
Yeah.
It's selection headaches sometimes a good thing.
Yeah. So as I said, you know, as I said, I think St Kilda will try and take a win, but I actually think the Giants will just keep themselves accountable for the competition. Yes. Honestly.
Yeah, I agree. All right, jumping over to our next game, probably going to be an absolute banger of a match, do or die, pretty much for both teams at Marvel Stadium. It's the Dogs hosting Fremantle.
To be fair, we said that last time, and then Fremantle got spanked by Brisbane. That being said, got the win earlier in the season. Very interesting game. Dogs during a lot of injury, but Fremantle had a few concerns in the game. Managed to battle it out. But overall, they had a lot of control until they didn't. Honestly, it's going to be Fremantle's defense versus the Dogs forward half press, because I don't think Freo are too worried about it. Like, they control the ball well enough. It's really only the forward going. So I think it's whether the Bulldogs' back line is capable of moving it forward, generating enough entries that way, versus like whether Fremantle are going to convert. Because if Fremantle convert enough, they can take the Doggies out the game. Doggies will undoubtedly get a few centre bounce goals. Will get the ball forward due to stoppage movement. But again, I think Freo playing a well-rounded game should still win this. But geez, it's fairly nervous times. You know, we said how bold, how more mature they've been playing, but you know, I said at the same time they might still miss out on finals with 15 wins. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, this is a crazy season, just like last season. Like the fact that the finals are still this close in round 24 is insane. Essentially what this comes down to: Dogs win and the Suns win at least one of their two games. Freo are out. Freo win, they're locked in, and the Dogs are out because it's the assumption. Well, this is provided the Suns win against Port. And then Freo win, Dogs are completely out. Top 8 is pretty much set. Obviously, where teams actually sit still will have to remain to be seen. But that will be that's how we will find out what the top 8 is.
Yeah, unless the Giants lose by 100 points and Bulldogs win by 1.
That's true. That is also true.
Oh, sorry, Saints win by 100 points. That's what I meant. But,
yes, the Saints win by 100 plus and absolutely demolish the Giants, which won't happen. Then the Giants go out. But otherwise, that's pretty much a situation.
I think it's actually probably more than 100 points. It is like, what, 7-odd percentage?
Yeah, it's going to have to be way more than 100.
Mean that St Kilda have to score.
That too.
It's never a reliable thing.
That too. In terms of a tip, Dogs are favourites going in, but honestly, this is a coin flip because of how much pressure is on this game. It's a genuine coin flip.
Yeah, I still back Freo, but I don't blame people for going on the Bulldogs bandwagon, especially after how they performed last week compared to their Wharfie constituents. Also, will be the retirement game for Bulldog Caesar, the mascot.
Yes, it will. And if this ends up being Freo's last game for the season, it will also be the retirement game for Nat Fyfe, which we also touched on earlier in the weeks. All right, let's jump over.
Actually, I guess Caesar could technically have another game if, like, because then
because of
Bulldogs
finals.
can't get higher than. Actually, can they get a home final?
They can get 5th or 6th.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
okay.
you if they could technically get top 4. Oh no, actually they can't. They can't technically get top 4, but
No, they can't get top 4, but
they can get a home final. Yes.
yeah.
All right, jumping over to our last Sunday game now. Another absolute banger of a match where the Lions, up at the Gabba, of course, are hosting Hawthorn. This is a spot for top 4. This is the fight for top 4.
It's almost win and you're in the top 4. There are some permutations where Hawthorn could win but still not make it.
Yes.
Which would have to be an absolute thumping by GWS or like a 500 to 1 point win from Fremantle over the Bulldogs.
And not to mention Collingwood having to just win in general to shore that up as well. Although
also the Suns.
Yeah, and the Suns, if
four.
they win both their games, they could potentially also snag top 4. It's all very varied at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. But as said, I would say it's more than 50% chance that Hawthorn make top 4 if they win this one. Brisbane coming off a very strong game. Hawthorn coming off they won last week, didn't they? I've totally forgotten who they played.
Yes, they did win last week. I've also forgotten who they played, but they did win.
Yeah, Brisbane were able to win this matchup when it was away. Again, Hawthorn a tiny bit flaky against some of the top teams, especially where Brisbane could probably actually match up on the outside just as well as Hawthorn can. So it's going to be interesting. You think that the Brisbane midfield can, fight a lot. So the defense of Hawthorn doesn't really matter if Brisbane can set up a forward half game going. But at the same time, with no Brisbane's defense to be a bit shaky at times, Gunston might get off the chain. Charles Shadir is creative enough to offer a few leads, and if they can at least bring the ball to ground, they at least should be able to generate shots. I think Brisbane are still semi-comfortable favourites, but if they miss a few, or Hawks are just really accurate, I can imagine that way. But just at the Gabba, it's just a tiny bit out of my expectations.
The reality of it is that the Brisbane haven't exactly been great at the Gabba this season. They've been all right, but it wasn't like their performances of last year. So the fact that it's at the Gabba might not even matter all that much.
No, it doesn't. But as I said, I guess the other thing too is as I said, if Hawks Smalls were doing a bit better, I might say, maybe the Gabba favors Hawthorn, but I don't know. I don't know. I still back Brisbane in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to back Brisbane in on this one as well. But again, this could be another coin flip game like the one previous. I want to hope that the Hawks bring their A game and actually make it either an upset, quote unquote upset, to possibly spoil Brisbane's top 4. Or just make it insanely close and make it really interesting. It would be great to see. But yeah, I think I definitely back Brisbane in as well. All right, jumping over to our technically last game of the round, the rescheduled opening round match between the Suns and the Bombers at People First Stadium. This is being played on the Wednesday, August 27th. So literally 9 days from as we're recording this, 8 days from release. So this is going to be really interesting to see what happens with this one.
Yeah, again, we'll probably touch on it lightly next week, but the Suns up against no defenders. You'd think that this could be a chance to really secure whatever happens in the Port game. You'll think, but Essendon, they can show a bit of scrap. I think at ground level, if Essendon can perform well on ground level, they'll keep up with the Suns, where this might be a game where Suns get 90 odd points and Essendon get what is it? They love getting 10 goals, 3 or something.
Yeah.
And just, from very minimal inside 50s and looking okay. Well, that's what you would hope.
The other thing for this is that the Suns are coming off of a 5-day break. And if the Port game is extremely hard, extremely physically challenging, they could make a big difference. And the Bombers are coming off of a 6-day break. But again, because of their injuries, because of their lack of structure in some areas, although they did play a very spirited game last week, of course, and play very structured very well. It could make a difference, but I'm not expecting it to make a difference. This is out of the two games. I expect the Suns to win this one outright more than the other one.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll probably talk about more about this one slightly more analytically next week, because again, this will be happening before, after we record. So it's a wait and
I'm pretty
see.
sure we're just going to say the same thing.
Oh yeah, probably, but we'll have a bit more of an idea as to what it could look like.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, sorry, I said all right as my mic was muted, so I said it all right like 3 different times now.
Right.
That brings us to the end of episode 72. So thank you all so much for coming out with us this week. Thank you for liking and subscribing and following us on YouTube and Spotify and on our socials, of course. Not that we really do all that much, but we're trying. I don't think we're both really up to much this week. Do you have much going on?
Oh, I'm doing a bit. Might be doing a good thing that Saturday matches are pretty crap, because I'll be going to the AFLW first game. Fremantle vs Brisbane should be a cracker. And then maybe doing a stream with Tiffy.
Hey.
Surprisingly. Subscribe to Epic Tiffy if you want to catch up with that. But it depends how cranky her baby is. She's a bit temperamental with night stream, being a young mother, or a mother of the young child, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah,
for me, I'm very much considering going to 3 different Richmond games this weekend, because we've got the VFL team have got the VFL wildcard match to get into finals on Saturday morning, and then that afternoon. So I believe that's like a 12:10 game. Then at 4:10 is Richmond and Geelong at the MCG. So I'll definitely be at that one. I'll be roots on ground for that one, guaranteed. And then on the Sunday is our Richmond VFL match, not VFL match, AFLW match. So I'm very tempted to go to that as well, be it my first AFLW game, because I definitely really want to check the girls out in person, and just see how they perform, just at ground level, of course, stuff like that. Otherwise, I don't think I have too much on this week. I'm trying to stream a little bit more. I finally finished Indiana Jones and the Great Circle's main story, so I'm cleaning up side quests and things on stream, as well as playing a bunch of Overwatch. If you joined me over the weekend, you would have seen the new character Wu Yang. He's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to his release in a little over a week for the new season, so that's going to be exciting. Otherwise, not doing too much else. This should be a fairly quiet weekend otherwise. And I'm definitely looking forward to when we hit the bye round before finals, because we're gonna have a bunch of interesting content to cover in that brief gap of time.
Yeah,
because we'll have
awards
ceremony.
Yeah.
We'll have we'll do a recap of the AFLW as to where they're at after the first couple of rounds. And probably some other stuff in there as well.
Yeah, I was planning on touching on the eliminated teams, just comparing them to preseason expectations. That big folder.
That's what I was missing. We will definitely do that.
Yeah, so which is good. Less notes. A lot of them are written, and it's just vibes.
Yes,
I'm all for.
It does mean that our episodes pretty much from after next week onwards will be a little shorter, but again, that's expected going into finals. Less games to talk about, less things, and then obviously the off season. We'll go through all of that as the weeks progress. But until then, thank you all so much. There's no bonus episode this week, so stay tuned next week for episode 73. And until then, we hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next week. Take care.